What character would realistically learn magic in Marvel? This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26. There's nothing better than a cup of hot tea on a rainy day. In Shenyan's office, the rainstorm outside the window made the windows rustle constantly, but the room was warm as spring. A warm fire was burning in the fireplace. Dumbledore was sitting in a rocking chair, drinking a cup of steaming honey tea. He said comfortably, "There is nothing better than drinking a cup of honey tea in this weather. It would be better if there were some cookies." The old man with white hair and beard was as happy as a child. This was the last day of the holiday. Most of the teachers had returned, and only Snape was still missing. Shenyan was grading homework at his desk. In the past 2 weeks, he took time to go to Romania and visit the dragon protectors and some vampires there. He gained a lot. He also dissected a female vampire without eyes, and the conclusion was that it was unremarkable. He suddenly stopped writing, turned his head and looked out the window. A lightning bolt struck, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. It seems that he succeeded. Shenyan turned his head to look at Dumbledore. Dumbledore didn't even raise his head. He lowered his head and took a sip of tea. He said, "No, I won't do that." Shenyan laughed even more wantonly, but he said nothing and continued to correct the homework. Dumbledore continued to drink his honey tea sip by sip until the hot tea in the cup was empty. He then said, "I will be away for a while." Shenyan didn't think that his last sentence was "I won't do that." He put down his pen, shook his head and smiled. "Remember to hand in your paper before you leave. You still owe me 3 papers on magic reactions. Harry and Hermione arrived at school on the last night of the holiday. They parted in the lobby on the first floor. Hermione was going to Gryffindor Tower. The Slytherin lounge was on the ground floor. The scene of Hawaii was still vivid in Harry's mind. Harry had a lot of fun there. Hermione's family were all very good people. Although Harry insisted on paying her share, she couldn't resist Mr. Granger, who had booked a room in advance. Thinking of this, she said goodbye to Hermione with a smile. She was carrying her black suitcase, which contained some toys and fruits she had brought back from Hawaii. She planned to read some books and sleep tonight. The advantage of living alone was that she didn't have to care about her roommate's feelings. There weren't any anyway. Although she didn't know what other people thought, she was happy to be free. What was wrong with that? Harry walked down the long stairs, and the flickering candlelight cast her shadow on the wall. She came to the basement, which was both gloomy and cold. It was said that it was even used as a dungeon in the past. Many Slytherin students liked to play some scary jokes here at night, and then be scared to death by a ghost who happened to pass by. They never learned their lessons. Harry hummed and continued to move forward, and the lights around her gradually dimmed. She walked to an empty, wet stone wall and said, "In the name of magic." Then, the stone wall disappeared, revealing a stone door. Behind the door was the Slytherin common room. The exquisite Gothic decoration style and the green lights make this place full of mystery at any time, and perhaps a little scary. Harry walked all the way into her room, closed the door with her foot, and put the box on the table. She noticed that the chandelier on the ceiling turned green again. It seemed that the elves cast a spell to turn the burning magic candles on it back to green in order to reflect the unified style when cleaning. She frowned, closed her eyes and mobilized her magic power. It took more than a minute to turn the candles into warm colors again. It's better to be warmer. How can you read books with green light? Do these elves have common sense? Unlike Gryffindor, she can't see normal scenery outside her window. Thanks to Slytherin's own abnormal aesthetics, every Slytherin student has to endure the aquatic creatures swimming outside the window for 7 years. Harry is no exception. Last time, when she looked up at her midnight snack, she found a squid looking at her outside the window. The sticky body made her lose her appetite. Harry had basically closed the curtains of her window tightly. She took off her leather shoes and threw them in the corner behind the door. She put on her pair of plush slippers she received for Christmas, sighed comfortably, and then sat at her desk to read History of Magic. Although this subject was not on the first-year exam, she was very interested. After a while, she stretched, Just as she was about to wash up and go to bed, an elf teleported into her room and said in its unique voice, "Ms. Potter, Professor Severus Snape wants to see you." In his office. After it said this, it disappeared with a crackling sound, without even giving Harry a chance to ask questions. She had to put on her leather shoes again and tidy up her hair. Harry hesitated for a while, and felt that it was indeed a bit cold on the way to the office, so she put on her tweed coat and went out. To be honest, no matter which house you are from, if you have never walked around at night during your 7 years at Hogwarts, then your life is incomplete. The magic stone door at the entrance of the Slytherin common room seemed to know that she was called by the head of Slytherin. Harry opened it by itself as soon as he approached. Snape's office was on the same floor as the Slytherin common room, both underground. There was no good view here, and it was not a good place for a night tour. The last time she and Ron dragged Hermione to the observatory in the middle of the night, the view from that place was very good. As Harry walked, he secretly wondered why Professor Snape wanted her to go to his office in the middle of the night. This journey was soon over. She stood at the door of Snape's office and knocked on the door. Snape's voice came from inside, a little out of breath. "Come in." She pushed the door open, and the fireplace in the room was burning with a strong flame, very warm. Snape was wrapped in a thick blanket, holding a cup of hot tea and sitting weakly in his chair. On the other side of the desk, a strange but familiar red-haired woman was looking at her with an expression she had never seen before. Strange, because they had never met before. Familiar, because Harry had seen her in a photo. The beautiful woman with red hair and green eyes was wearing a black dress, sitting there with the fragrance of moisture and soil, like a vivid painting. But a painting is just a painting. No matter how vivid it is just a painting. The person sitting here is a living person. The woman smiled gently, and she opened her mouth to say something, but was interrupted by Harry, who rushed over. She cried, not suppressed like she had been bullied before. For the first time she cried in her mother's arms without restraint and without worries. If this was a dream, she was willing to indulge in it and never wake up. Snape looked at them with a complicated look. He said nothing. He didn't need to say anything, but drank the hot tea in the cup with a relieved smile. There is nothing better than a cup of hot tea on a rainy day. Chapter 27. No. Late at night, Shenyan was staring at the small Hungarian horntail on his desk in a daze. The dragon without horns was sleeping particularly soundly at this moment, and its once intimidating appearance had become somewhat cute due to the change in size. Don't get me wrong, he was not a Fury fan, but he felt some strange phenomena from this hornless dragon. Shenyan took out the 2 bottles of blood that he had saved from the void. The violent magic power came from it, and now the magic power on this dragon seemed even a little sacred. The only thing that could explain this phenomenon was the healing spell from heaven. He narrowed his eyes. I said why the spell from heaven can also be used here, Shenyan muttered to himself. He grabbed the horntail, squeezed it hard, and black ashes fell from his fingers. The dragon died silently. Shenyan opened his palm, and some of the blood from the horn was floating in the air, which had turned into a golden color and emitted a bright white light, which actually illuminated the room as bright as day. Interesting. Instead of getting angry, Shenyan smiled. The angels who were already afraid of him could not have predicted that they would travel through the world and use this spell on the dragons in another world. They did not have this ability. The most accurate inference is that there is a back door in this spell, which will gradually transform the recipient into a creature in heaven. Shenyan still remembers the knowledge he learned from the ancient book Heaven and Hell. The angels were not really created by the so-called God, but by the unique dimension of heaven. What God is, there is still no conclusion. Some people even say that God is afraid of these creatures that he created with his own hands and wandered on the earth, so he returned to heaven. Shenyan can say this, although he has not seen God. He is not in heaven. As for angels, he knows them very well. These creatures that look noble and beautiful will give mortals a special sense of affinity, and they are not all human-shaped. Under the shining of the halo above their heads, mortals will directly become believers in heaven, making the independent dimension of heaven stronger. In other words, if a living creature of heaven appears in this world where heaven has never appeared, the result is nothing more than that this world will be completely reduced to the back garden of heaven, where people can take whatever they want. The earth has also experienced such a dark time, but the Ancient One swept all those things out of the world and told them never to come back. Although there were believers who were not afraid of death who did this later, there was another Shenyan. The spell he used had been in the hands of people for thousands of years. It was used by priests, girls who claimed to be inspired by God, and even by cultists. Naturally, mages can also use it. Just like the angels preach that God loves the world, anyone, as long as you have powerful magic, you can use this healing spell from heaven. The effect is so powerful that you can be saved immediately even if you only have one breath left. In such a long time, no one has been transformed into a creature of heaven because of this spell, so why would a weak dragon in another world gradually transform after being used? He couldn't figure it out, but he wrote it down. The mage's thirst for knowledge was very strong. Shenyan saved the blood and stuffed it into his magic backpack together with the previous ones. In fact, it was a pocket dimension. It has been almost a year since he came to this world. He has taught them everything he can, except for those powerful spells that may even lead to the destruction of the world. He did not write them in the basic spells collection. Next, the development of this world depends on their own luck. The world barrier told him that nothing has happened recently, and he can start preparing for the cross-border soon. His broken soul has gradually recovered in the nourishment of this year. What he has to do next is nothing more than waiting step by step. Shenyan thought so and stood up. He planned to meditate for a while to pass the night, but between tomorrow and an accident, the accident always comes first. Mage, the barrier suddenly screamed in his mind. He turned his head and looked out the window, and immediately wrapped the entire Hogwarts with his mental power, and a huge, glowing, vague human figure appeared above the dark sky. The halo above the giant human head exuded the magical brilliance unique to heaven. Bang! His office door was knocked open, and Dumbledore limped in, holding his neck. He could hardly breathe, staggered and fell on the desk, took a deep breath and said with difficulty, "Then, what is that?" Shenyan looked at him deeply, said nothing, and just let Dumbledore fall into a deep sleep. His mental power burst out with all his strength, causing all creatures in the school to fall asleep, even the unicorns in the Forbidden Forest. The vague human figure was still hanging high in the sky, emitting light. He stretched out a hand and pointed at Shenyan from a distance, and a huge white beam of light blasted towards his office. A semicircular heavy black shield followed closely behind, protecting the entire Hogwarts. The beam bombarded it and sank into it, disappearing. Shenyan flew up to the sky with an ugly expression. The black magic formed a huge shadow behind him, pressing towards the vague human figure without any concealment, but was stopped by the countless beams released by him in midair. This time, the beams were not absorbed, but collided with the black magic in the air. The strong energy burst out from the collision of the two swept across the entire sky in an instant. This terrifying energy was about to raise half of Britain to the ground. Shenyan's eyes condensed, and a huge shadow suddenly appeared under his feet. Hundreds of huge tentacles flew out, pulling the shockwave back abruptly in a way that violated the laws of physics. The sound of chewing came from the shadow. Shenyan closed his eyes. At this moment, he already knew that continuing to fight with this creature that looked like an angel would only cause the world to collapse bit by bit, and he had to take him to another place. He made a decision and exerted all his strength. Huge magic lightning and violent rain of fire appeared out of thin air. These powerful magics that could wipe out a city blasted towards the vague human figure. He did not dodge or evade, but let them hit his body. Not long after, his body became a little bigger. Shenyan narrowed his eyes. This ghost thing he had never seen before could actually absorb magic power, so simply attacking it with the energy-shaping spell was like throwing meat at a two-headed ogre. However, it was not without a solution. He secretly gathered strength. At this moment, he spoke. Millions of different voices merged together, and clear hymns sounded in the air. 6 pairs of pure white energy wings spread out from behind him. He said, "There is no need to do this. We don't have to fight." "Strange wizard, explain," Shenyan asked calmly. "Don't be so nervous, cross-border mage. I can trade with you," he continued. "Aren't you all eager for new knowledge and spells? I have a whole library, and you can choose 500 books to take away. These books are all from different worlds, or I can give you the coordinates of a new world. How about it? Shenyan just said calmly. I just want to know one thing. If I agree, what will you do to this world? His body rippled, as if laughing, and after a long time, he said, a cross-border mage with a bottom line. It's incredible. Answer the question. It's no longer necessary, mage. My fellow tribesmen have come here. It seems that you don't belong to any organization. You are a wild cross-border mage. You are really tempting. He spoke in a gentle tone that made Shenyan sick. Behind him, the space was torn apart out of thin air, and dozens of creatures similar to him walked out of it. Don't think about continuing to accumulate energy to complete the trick you are about to perform. Your spells are ineffective against me. Stand still, wizard. For the sake of the White Tower Council, we will not kill you. By the way, the deal is still valid as long as you agree. He said this with an undisguised joy. Shenyan did not speak. He was silent. The lines on his face became cold and hard, and his hands lit up with black magic again. Yes, just watch them die. It's very simple. They have only known each other for a year. Compared with his wishes and pursuits, these mortals are nothing. But some people just can't convince themselves. They will waver, but they just can't convince themselves to let this matter go and choose the easy way. You can say they are stupid. You can say they have no vision. You can even say they are crazy. But even if it happens 100 times, the result is already doomed. They will just refuse, because that is not something that can be changed by the promise of temporary benefits. It is a belief rooted deep in their hearts that makes them them. If I agree, what will I become? It was because of me that you came here, and now, am I going to just walk away? There is a cause for every effect. So, facing the dozens of huge blurry figures that have brainwashed most of the world, Shenyan said only one word. No. I have something to do today, so I can only find time to write one update. Thank you for your recommendation votes, monthly votes and rewards. There will be 5 updates tomorrow. I shamelessly beg for votes. Thank you everyone. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28 Overeating. Don't make a mistake, mage. He still smiled and said, do you really think you can save the world? You are just a very lucky cross-border mage. If you stand still, then, for the sake of the White Tower, we will not kill you. There was no emotion on Shenyan's face. The magic power he had prepared for a long time burst out, but it was not as the fuzzy figure thought, releasing an attack magic that had no effect on him, but releasing a very low-level portal in his eyes. This door sent Shenyan to the top of his head. Then, his soul floated out of his body, and his body fell to the ground, stirring up a pool of smoke and dust. The black soul jumped into his body. He let out a sharp scream, and the originally white fuzzy body trembled at this time, and was stained with black from the center at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a few seconds, his entire body turned into pure black. His fellow tribesmen looked at him in doubt, and some of them had raised their hands, and the white light was blooming little by little. You are very interesting, pure energy creatures, so you are immune to magic attacks, right? Shenyan's voice came from the huge black blurry humanoid, and he controlled this huge body to move. He nimbly dodged the huge beams of light, and 2 extremely long soul blades appeared in the huge hands of the humanoid, as black as ink. Shenyan's voice at this moment was like thunder. What about soul attacks? Madman, how dare you use your own soul as a weapon? One of them cursed, but in the next second, Shenyan, who appeared behind him, stabbed his heart with a knife, if he had one, from the place where he was stabbed. The black was quickly swallowing the white. In the next second, dozens of white beams bombarded this fellow being transformed, causing him to turn into ashes and disappear with a scream. They were very decisive. Even if they killed their companions with their own hands, they could not make the magician stronger. However, their actions also made Shenyan and midair laugh. So you are not immune to the energy attacks from your own kind? I understand. He retracted the sharp blade made of his soul, clasped his hands together, and a pure black energy beam burst out from between his fingers, accurately hitting each of their heads with their own energy properties, causing them to fall into a moment of stiffness. But this is not over yet. Under Shenyan's feet, the huge black shadow that had been prepared for a long time was quickly taking shape. Dozens of thick giant tentacles stretched out from it, tied up the one closest to him, and dragged him into it. I have to say, you taste really great, Shenyan said, and even burped. The fate of the vague human figure dragged into the shadow by him is self-evident. It's not that he hasn't eaten energy creatures before, but he has never eaten such a big one, so it's inevitable that he will be full. And there are so many in front of him, it seems that he will be a big eater today. Stop, mage. We can share this world with you. It's true. We can trade with you under the witness of the White Tower Council, one of them said anxiously, with a huge hole on his forehead that was recovering rapidly. Let's talk about what the White Tower Council is first. Shenyan knew that he was trying to delay time, but so was he. People who eat too much always need time to digest before they can do strenuous exercise. He was afraid that Shenyan would eat another one if he disagreed with him, so he spoke at a very fast speed. The White Tower Council is an organization composed of many cross-border mages like you. They provide protection for all mages who have crossed over in the Starry Sea. As long as you stop, we can share this world with you. We cannot violate the contract of the White Tower Council. Believe me. The anxiety in his tone did not seem fake, but Shenyan had no interest in this mysterious White Tower Council at this time. He raised his huge black arm, and a beam of light flashed, cutting the one who was speaking in half. The tentacles stretched out again, dragging his body, which was divided into two parts, into the shadows amid his screams. Shenyan said nothing. He just thought he was eating a buffet. These creatures that were so arrogant not long ago were like dogs that had lost their homes. The halos on their heads were still shining, and their bodies were still emitting white light. However, whether they resisted or fled, it was useless. They were dragged into the shadows under Shenyan's feet one by the huge black tentacles. This special buffet lasted from late at night to dusk, and lasted for a whole day. The people in Hogwarts were still sleeping soundly, and those who were brainwashed returned to normal after the source of the influence was removed. For them, this short moment was not even enough for them to understand what happened. Shenyan floated above the earth. The black humanoid body he was living in had grown to the size of a city after absorbing 23 of his kind. He struggled to mobilize the violent magic in his body and cast an invisibility spell. Although there were not many satellites above the Earth in the 1990s, they had to be guarded against. He didn't want to leave any strange unsolved mysteries. It was a risky move, but it was fruitful. Let's not talk about the mysterious White Tower that they feared. The memories of energy creatures are stored in their own bodies. After he devoured these creatures, he learned without surprise that they did come from heaven, but not the heaven in Shenyan's image. It was the source of all heavens, the eternal heaven. This title is loud enough, but the name is ordinary, even a little weird and absurd. Doesn't heaven exist forever in most cases? Not every world has a group of rebellious Camartage wizards. The wizards learned from their memories that the eternal heaven is very famous in the endless sea of stars, but it is not a good reputation. They will throw out the information of heaven through information of disturbance, just like throwing a drifting bottle. If an undiscovered world picks up this bottle and uses the spell in it, then it will be tracked. These angels come to take this world into their pockets. This behavior is called discovery by them. Discovery? Shenyan laughed. You discovered a world that is already inhabited. What kind of discovery is that? According to their logic, after dinner, I went to the parking lot and found that an owner's car had driven away. Is that also a discovery? You can try to say that to the police who came, but discovery is only the first step. After they arrive, they will brainwash everyone and make them become loyal believers of heaven. They will use their faith to shine and heed heaven for their whole lives and contribute energy. Even after death, their souls will be taken away to be used as fuel. When he flipped through this part in his memory, he could no longer suppress the cold smile on his face. A weird sense of humor reminded him of a talk show he had seen before. It was a short piece by George Carlin. Shenyan remembered the white-haired old man he saw in the theater at that time. He stood on the stage with a funny look on his face and performed in a humorous tone. "So, you want me to believe that there is an invisible person in the sky, watching your actions all the time, and this person has a special list of 10 things you are not allowed to do. If you violate any of them, then he has a place full of fire and smoke, only pain and torture, specially prepared for you, throw you there to make you suffer, suffocate and burn, scream endlessly, until everything ends. But he loves you." What an ironic joke. Shenyan moved his fingers, and his body left on the earth was flying upwards. When it flew in front of him, his soul floated out and returned to his body again. And by the way, he also ate this black angel body. He ignored the magic power in his body that had begun to riot because of eating too much, emptied all the complicated thoughts in his brain, and began to meditate. He must digest all of this magic power, otherwise the consequences will be fatal to the wizard. You may just want to cast a small spell, such as conjuring a glass of water and a piece of bread. But the result is a violent fireball that burns all the people within 100 miles into charcoal. This is not an acceptable result. He is extremely demanding of himself, otherwise he would not have achieved today's results. The promised extra chapters are here, and the test pushes here. I am in a good mood, and tomorrow will be even better. I code now, so it will be a little slow. I will upload 2 chapters first, eat a meal and then continue to work. I will continue to shamelessly beg for votes. Thank you everyone. Chapter 29 And the Earth Remains. After floating in outer space for a week, Shenyan opened his eyes again. He controlled the magic power in his body to an acceptable intensity. However, it is foreseeable that before he fully controls the extra magic power, he will not use some powerful magic again. Otherwise, the magic power that riots again is likely to create an unprecedented explosion in his body without any recognition of relatives. Powerful refers to the kind of spell that can blow up a planet. He himself has not used it many times, only a few hundred times. He did not plan to return to Hogwarts yet, so he flew to the moon nearby. The magic barrier that had been running around his body prevented his body from falling to death before, and also ensured that he could breathe freely in outer space now. Shenyan remembered Guyi's comment on magic power. As she said, magic power is indeed very omnipotent. The wizard slowly descended, and the dust on the surface of the moon scattered under his feet, but not a single grain of it stained the corners of his black robe. He stood, his black hair fluttering on this silent and deserted planet. Just like that, Shenyan quietly stared at the blue planet not far away. It floated in the dark universe, slowly and firmly rotating, and this rotation might continue for a very, very long time, so long that the life on it would come and go and replace countless generations. And the Earth was still there. He had roamed the universe in the previous world, and had seen too many beautiful planets in this boundless starry sky. The scenery of the Earth was just a grain of sand in it, and in this world, he had only been here for a year. Why should he risk his life to protect them? He himself didn't know the answer. At this moment of mixed emotions, Shenyan thought of Ancient One and laughed unconsciously. He thought, maybe this was why Ancient One agreed to let him study in Kamardage. You really see through everything, teacher, Shenyan murmured to himself. Professor, he hasn't come to class for a week, although Professor Snape's lectures are not bad, and he's not as fierce as before, but I still want Professor He to teach us. A Gryffindor girl and her companion walked through the noisy corridor. Harry, Ron and Hermione were resting by the French window. When they heard this, their faces became strange. Ron whispered, "Do you think Snape would go back to his old self if he knew they were talking about him like this?" Harry glanced at him and said unhappily, "First, call him Professor. Second, I don't think he's that fierce." After that, she turned around and walked away, leaving Ron standing there with an innocent look. The silly boy turned his head to look at Hermione and asked with a puzzled look on his face, "Did I say anything to make her angry?" Hermione rolled her eyes, stuffed the book in her arms into Ron's hands, lowered her head to tie her shoelaces, and began to complain about how slow Ron was. The sun shone through the clouds, hitting the window and shining on her fluffy brown hair. Ron didn't listen to what Hermione said at this time. He stared at Hermione's profile in a daze, not realizing how obvious his eyes were. So Hermione, who tied her shoelaces and stood up, elbowed him hard. She grabbed her book and ran away with a red face. Looking at the girl going away, Ron smiled foolishly. At this moment, a flash of light made him cover his eyes and scream. Oh, little Ron got it. Yes, he got it. Ron opened his eyes and saw his twin brothers standing in front of him, laughing and singing a song about little Ron getting it in a weird tune. Fred was holding a camera in his hand. Ron immediately rushed towards them. In the fight, the photo fell to the ground and was lost. Ron may never know that the photo that made him and his two brothers chase each other in the corridor and even punished by Filch to clean the classroom for 2 weeks was actually a dark picture. Fred forgot to open the lens hood. He remembered this afterwards but didn't tell Ron. He just discussed with George with a sly smile and blackmailed Ron for 2 months' pocket money with this long-lost black photo. They used the money to buy Ron a great gift on his birthday. I think it's better not to tell the child that his pet mouse is an animagus. Professor McGonagall looked at the twitching fat man on the ground with disgust and said to Dumbledore, who was standing beside him, "I agree, Minerva, I agree." As he said, he stalked Lily Potter, who wanted to throw a few curses at Peter to vent her anger, and winked at Snape, asking him to take Lily, who was on the verge of emotional collapse, out of the room. Snape's emotional intelligence in interpersonal communication has never been so outstanding. He immediately understood, comforted Lily softly, and took her away. Professor McGonagall looked at Peter Pettigrew on the ground, and this serious lady who always didn't smile showed a complicated expression for the first time. She said to Peter, "I never thought that the traitor would be you, Peter." Peter, who was still twitching, gasped hard. He spoke intermittently, and tears actually flowed from his eyes. "I'm sorry, Dean, but I can't do anything. He is too powerful. I am afraid of the Dark Devil. Dean, I am very afraid. I am not as brave as James Lupin and Sirius. I didn't do it on purpose. He forced me. He forced me." The man who was willing to turn into a mouse to escape the crime and lived in this way for many years was in tears at this time. He said words of repentance to the former dean and respected teacher. But Professor McGonagall just shook her head sadly. "You broke a family. Let an innocent person spend many years in Azkaban and let him bear the crime that he should not have. Peter, if you still think you are a Gryffindor, you should be ashamed of yourself." I repent. I repent, Dean. Please." Peter seemed to realize what was about to happen. He screamed for mercy and called the dean to try to soften McGonagall's heart. But a white light was already glowing in Dumbledore's hand. The light flashed by, and Peter froze with that terrified expression, and he turned into a statue. Dumbledore supported McGonagall, who could hardly stand because of grief, and took her to sit on a chair. He said, "I will take him to the Ministry of Magic and let him be tried. I will talk to Sirius. Minerva, don't push yourself too hard. This is Peter's own choice." Professor McGonagall smiled bitterly. She looked at the ground in front of her, and said with a melancholy tone, "I understand that. I just feel sorry for them." Second update. Chapter 30. Sirius released from prison. The Minister of Magic, Cornelius Fudge, who has gained a lot of weight in recent days, was wiping the sweat off his face. He was somewhat amazed at Dumbledore's efficiency. He could catch Voldemort and find Horcruxes as soon as he said so. Now, Voldemort, who was only a skin left, was still lying in the dungeon under the Ministry of Magic, and he had sent him another accomplice. Some time ago, many Death Eaters who tried to attack the Ministry of Magic, or those spies who had been hiding in the Ministry of Magic for many years without being exposed, were also caught and locked up with their masters. These political achievements made Fudge's reputation soar, and even made him smile when he saw everyone this year. His reputation among the members of the ministry also became very good. After all, it is rare to have an amiable boss. Therefore, when he saw Dumbledore now, it was like seeing his father who had passed away many years ago, especially when Dumbledore appeared in his office with a stone statue. He immediately stood up to greet him. Back to the point. After listening to the narration, Fudge wiped his sweat, nodded, and said to Dumbledore affirmatively, "Don't worry, Dumbledore. Sirius will be acquitted soon, but you also know that this matter cannot be publicized." He squinted and looked back at the statue. Dumbledore understood and lifted the magic cast on Peter, but let him fall into a coma again. Dumbledore waved his hand and said with a smile, "Don't worry. As long as Sirius is released, I believe those critics in the newspaper will not talk about it." Hearing this, Fudge laughed again immediately, and his facial features on his fatter face were squeezed into a ball, and Dumbledore also laughed. They shook hands, and Dumbledore said, "Then I won't bother you, Minister Fudge." Then he left. Sitting in his office, Fudge looked at Peter, who had fainted, with a smile. He was waiting for the Aurors to come up and take this guy away. He seemed to have remembered something and quickly took out a small mirror to tidy up his hair. "Keep up your image, Fudge. You are about to become the best minister of magic in the history of Britain." The thin man who was sent out of Azkaban by the Dementors stood there at a loss. He was told that he was free 20 minutes ago. He was originally suffering all the time. Now he was blowing the cold wind on the island, full of melancholy. He didn't know why he was released, nor did he know what he was going to do. He didn't know where the rat-like betrayer was now. Thinking of it, he would think of his friends. The man's heart was suddenly filled with anger, hatred and guilt. These emotions made him howl in pain, and the sound spread far away in the dark night. The pain in his heart could not be released. He didn't go crazy all these years because he knew he was innocent. But what kind of truth is the truth that only one person knows? Being misunderstood by everyone, facing the dark cell and those terrifying Dementors every day, wasted more than 10 years in prison, but was released again today. "Sirius," a familiar voice called behind him. The thin man with a big beard turned his head suddenly, his eyes full of disbelief. He saw a person who should have died. He saw Lily Potter. No, this." He spoke incoherently, making Lily burst out laughing. Sirius was still in shock, but he caught a glimpse of another figure from the corner of his eye. He saw Severus Snape standing there with a gloomy face, still wearing a black suit. However, his temperament was very different from before. His hair was no longer shiny, and his clothes were no longer dirty. He even wore a neat suit, and the leather shoes on his feet were all shiny. Compared with Sirius, who was wearing a shabby black robe, it was like heaven and earth. He pointed at Snape, his arms shaking. What's wrong with you?" Sirius would never believe that Snape would come to pick him up from prison. It is true that they did go too far at the beginning, but the fact that this man was devoted to the dark magic proved that he was not a good person. Lily was right to choose James instead of him. These thoughts flashed through Sirius's mind, but Snape didn't even have the energy to give him half an expression. He turned slightly sideways with an expressionless face, letting the red-haired and green-eyed girl behind him. She stood there, walked forward, and called out coquettishly, "Godfather." Sirius was stunned at this moment. He looked at Lily, then at Snape, and then turned his head to look at Harry. If the doubts in his heart were written into a book, it would be comparable to half of the Oxford Dictionary. "So, that guy has been arrested?" Sirius changed into a clean and tidy set of clothes at this time, and trimmed his hair and beard. Although still skinny, at least he looked much better than the beggar-like image before. He sat on the newly bought comfortable red sofa in the restored Potter house, with a blazing fire burning in the fireplace. Lily brought him a blanket to wrap him up. Snape did not choose to sit down. He was alone in the garden outside the door, appreciating the night sky. A poor interface. Unfortunately, even if Lily advised him not to listen, he just didn't want to come in and share a room with Sirius. Harry went back to school. She had classes tomorrow. Lily was extremely relieved by the girl's self-awareness in this regard. "Yes, he has been sent to the Ministry of Magic. So has Voldemort. They have all been arrested." "Sirius, we are completely safe." Lily looked at her husband's good friend. He was still handsome when he was young, but he was too thin and too weak, like a skeleton with skin and bones. "But I'm afraid your story can't be reported, Sirius." "I'm afraid the Ministry of Magic won't allow this," Lily said again, and her words got Sirius a carefree smile. "I don't care what other people think of me. I'm really sorry to see that you and Harry are fine." "I don't know what to say." His smile was fleeting, and in the blink of an eye, his eyes were red. Lily smiled and poured him a cup of hot tea. Sirius grabbed the blanket and covered his head. His muffled voice came from the blanket. "So how did you come back?" "Severus did it." Sirius grabbed the blanket covering his head. He jumped up from the sofa, and asked in shock. Yes, it's him. Lily nodded calmly. But him? Sirius experienced too many shocks in these few hours, and he was almost numb. His language function seemed to be numb, or it was gradually degenerated in these more than 10 years of prison life. He stuttered, danced, and tried his best to express his confusion. Okay, sit down first, and I'll explain it to you slowly. In the past year, the wizarding world has changed a lot. A man whose name they didn't tell me changed the entire teaching method of Hogwarts. He brought a new way of casting spells and a lot of advanced knowledge. After Severus learned it, he resurrected me. Then why not resurrect James too, right? Lily asked back as if she knew what he wanted to say. Sirius's originally righteous expression quickly turned into a guilty one. Lily glanced at him, picked up her cup of tea and took a sip. She said leisurely, "It seems that you still know how much you did to him in the past." But he is a... Sirius swallowed back the words he wanted to say under Lily's stern stare. Lily looked at him and said seriously, "I don't deny that he did go astray before, but he has been atonement for his sins for more than 10 years. If he hadn't pleaded for mercy, Harry might have died." The more Lily spoke, the louder her voice became. "If it weren't for him, I wouldn't be standing here, I wouldn't identify Peter, and you wouldn't come out. How dare you ask him to do more? Think about it, Sirius Black, think about it. How could magic that can resurrect people be without a price?" Sirius lowered his head, and he listened depressedly. After a while, he stood up and walked to the door. "Where are you going?" "Go and apologize to him." Sirius' voice came, with a sense of having to do it. Lily smiled and picked up the tea. The third update, feeling that the body is hollowed out. Chapter 31 Farewell. "Sit down, Dumbledore, I'm here to say goodbye." Shenyan motioned the old man who stood up when he saw him to sit down. He pulled out the purple velvet chair in front of Dumbledore's desk and sat on it. "Farewell?" "Yes, I'm afraid I have to leave." Shenyan nodded to him. He continued, "It's not that I want to leave, but I'm afraid that if I don't leave, I might bring you an unprecedented war." "Is it about those things?" Dumbledore's face became serious, and his blue eyes looked at Shenyan through the lenses. His phoenix, Fawkes, was looking at the two humans from a high scaffold nearby. The man just nodded. The old man sighed. He stood up, shook hands with Shenyan, his tone full of sincerity. "It's a pleasure to work with you. I am also very honored to be one of your students." Shenyan laughed. "No need to be like this, Dumbledore. The abundant magic power will give you a very long life. Maybe we will meet again one day. Now, if you don't mind, I want to go to give my students one last class." He turned and left, and the sound of closing the door was very light. Dumbledore sat in a chair, not knowing what he was thinking. Shenyan walked slowly in the corridor, and the students passing by greeted the professor who had not seen him for a week. He responded one by one with a smile on his face. He walked all the way to the 4th floor and pushed open the familiar door. Standing on the podium was Severus Snape in black. He was stunned for a moment when he saw Shenyan, then walked over and asked softly, "Are you back?" "Yes, Mr. Snape. Let me teach this class. This should be my last class." Snape looked at him deeply, nodded, and walked out of the classroom. Shenyan walked up to the podium, and cheers rang out in the classroom. Shenyan rarely smiled gently during class. He smiled and pressed his hands down, signaling the restless little wizards to quiet down. "Although saying this at this time may be a bit of a bummer, I must tell you that this will be my last class." Exclamations rang out all around. "In this class, I don't plan to teach magic theory or any knowledge. I just want to tell you one thing. Has anyone here played RPG games?" Many little wizards in jackets raised their hands. "Very good. But I still need to explain it. After all, not everyone knows this term. You can think of this as a special game. You can freely set your character's name, whether it is a man or a woman, and even the appearance, personality, and background. You can even set what he or she likes and doesn't like to do. Let's call it an avatar. During this special journey, your avatar will experience various adventures, face difficulties, and find treasures. But the journey will eventually end. At the end of the journey, what will your avatar do? What will you do?" He specially set aside some time for them to think. This is the cruelty of parting. No matter whether you have thought about it or not, no matter whether you have rehearsed it in your mind or not, but when that day really comes, all the preparations you had made before will become empty. In RPG games, your avatar will get an ending when he or she reaches the end of the journey. He or she may retire to the countryside or die on the battlefield. He or she may spend the rest of her life with her lover, or he or she may immerse herself in studying magic until death comes. Parting is something we must endure in our lives. I know some of you may feel very uncomfortable about this, but remember what I said in the first class? The amount of magic power is not the criterion for determining whether a wizard is qualified. He or she whispered this sentence, and the children sitting opposite him, recited it in unison with him. My teacher told me the second half of this sentence. Now I'll tell you, the amount of magic power is not the criterion for determining whether a wizard is qualified, but whether one is calm. Do not lose this calmness under any circumstances. Everyone, even if you are facing a dragon, please be courageous, cast spells calmly, and defeat it fiercely in the way I taught you. Don't regard parting as never seeing each other again, and don't beautify it too poetically. You may not care about it, or you may feel uncomfortable about it for a long time, but the meaning of parting is to see each other again. I'm done. Goodbye, classmates. He turned and left the podium, walked through the door of the classroom, and stepped into his portal without any nostalgia. His departure was as silent as his arrival, and only a few people in the world knew about it. Shenyan appeared on the moon again. The touch in his heart had not subsided, but he could not stop. From the memories of those angels, he had obtained their method of breaking the boundary. After reading dozens of methods, Shenyan had to admit one thing, that his initial way of crossing the boundary was really rough and primitive. However, now, it can be improved. His method is full of uncertainty and risk, and it also needs to rely on the weak point of the world barrier, then pull out half of the soul to assimilate with it, so that he has the same properties as the world barrier, and then pass through the weak point, wander the sea of stars, and be sucked into the unknown planet. It is not even known whether he will be picked up by a curious god from outside the domain. For the first time, Shenyan felt that his luck was simply too good. When angels go out in groups, they will use the endless energy of the eternal heaven. It is unknown how many worlds they have brainwashed to get so much. The energy will be sent to something called the crossing engine. In the memory of the angels, that thing usually appears as a huge and hot ball of light. Just enter the coordinates of that world, and you can reach that world. They rely on the method of throwing drift bottles to let mortals use their spells, so as to assimilate creatures through the back door left in them, and transform them into heavenly creatures as vanguards. In the process, you can also get the coordinates from this world, so you can go directly there and discover that world. Cold, precise and efficient. But it's not what he needs, not to mention whether he can use that thing. Shenyan didn't think he could walk into someone's lair after killing 25 angels, and asked politely like nothing happened. Hello, I know it may be a bit impolite to say this, but I would like to borrow your cross engine, can I? Although those 25 angels did not get here by using the world coordinates. But, this thing is really interesting. The fourth update, I am really awesome. Chapter 32, Traveling Again with an Old Man Who Hopes to Die. The world coordinates, in the angel's summary, can be roughly divided into two categories. Just like the coordinate system in mathematics, however, they are only similar on the surface, but actually completely different. The angels use the cross to simply and roughly classify countless different worlds. The one on the top is a normal world. There may be wars, but there will never be wars for years. The moral level is also relatively normal. This is the original words in the angel's memory. The one on the bottom is the crazy world where everyone wants to kill each other, which may be innate or acquired. There are also cases where people who were originally on the top run to the bottom, or people who were on the bottom run to the top. On the left is a world where magic is more popular, and on the right is a world that uses technology. They rely on this system to classify and summarize the world, but this also means that there must be a world that is the center of this cross. Although Shenyan always feels that it should not be classified so generally, he knows nothing about this aspect. And he also thinks that if you don't understand something at all, it is better to listen to the advice of experienced people. Although their suggestions were rather special and not given voluntarily, they still helped him a lot. For this, he would thank them. Among the angels' long list of ways to cross, there was one that was most suitable for single-person use. Although it was a bit risky, it was still very safer than his method. He did it right away. He followed the instructions in the method, mobilized his magic power together on his right hand, and his body slowly flew up, slowly wandering in the starry sky, until he came to the border of the Milky Way, where the world barrier had specially reserved a cross-border plan for him. He slowly applied his magic power and felt the vibration of the world barrier with all his heart. After 3 full days, he finally got a clue. It was a wonderful and indescribable rhythm. He did not dare to be careless and immediately put his body and mind into it. At this moment, he actually slowly crossed the world barrier, coming to that strange sea of stars again. One after another universes wrapped in glass-like substances flashed around him. This was a completely different experience, which made people feel their own insignificance. Shenyan had no intention to observe those strange worlds. At present, he could not go directly to the world he wanted to go to, so he had to try his best to maintain his own vibration, the same range as the world barrier, so that he would not be directly observed by the gods outside the domain. Like last time, Shenyan's mind once again appeared the consciousness of moving forward, and an inexplicable thrust pushed him to travel between these glass balls. After a while, he felt that he might not be able to maintain it anymore, so he found a nearby one and drilled into it. He named the world he had just visited Hogwarts. The method of those angels should not have any major problems. This world should also be considered a normal world. Anyway, it can't be too bad. In the familiar attraction, he saw the scenery in front of him passing by quickly again. Shenyan recovered from the feeling of weightlessness and stood in a lush jungle with a very pure smile on his face. He felt a very strong magical atmosphere, which was very good, very good. A white-haired old man was leaning on his desk, holding a feather pen, dipped in ink, and writing something attentively. 1233 years have just passed, and I still haven't seen a reliable witcher. Most of them look expressionless, but I know that they are not as cold and heartless as they appear. But it is too difficult to find someone trustworthy, and I can't find a wizard. God knows what those guys will do to her. If there really is a God, please bless me. I am too old, so old that I may take this secret to the grave at any time. But this secret is definitely not worthy of sleeping with me underground. She must be taken care of. I am too old, too old. After writing this, the old man rubbed his eyes tiredly. As he said, he was really too old. Old enough to become the oldest person in the village, old enough to send his own son away, and old enough that he himself could not remember how long he had lived. He picked up the pen and continued to write. I never thought that a strange encounter 50 years ago would make me live so long, but the longer I live, the more I feel that a long life is not a blessing, but a curse. Over the years, I watched my Anastasia leave. I watched my little John grow into a big boy, watched him join the army and die in battle. I am very tired, and I urgently want to sleep forever, but I can't yet. I must fulfill that promise, that secret. She must be entrusted to someone who is trustworthy. I must complete it. He put down the pen and closed the thick book with his wrinkled hands. The feather pen was thrown aside by him. Old Samuel Vito, a prestigious elder in the village, sat tiredly in his chair, looking at the garden outside his window. He thought of the time when Anastasia was still alive. Oh, his Anna. He still remembered that Anna left 10 years ago. It was very sudden, just a peaceful sleep, and when he woke up the next day, he found that Anna's life had left her body. Samuel was not too sad at the time, but after burying her, sadness followed him like a shadow. He missed her every minute of the days that had passed without her. The dead are gone, but the memories left behind will fill the place where they lived together. This was once the secret of happiness, but now it has become a poison that harms people. And Samuel drank this arsenic willingly. He did not leave, nor did he collapse as some people worried. The old man just continued to live alone, and he still had a superior status in the village. As the oldest person, The birth of a new baby would invite him, the marriage of young people would invite him, and the death of the old would still invite him. This small village in the borderland seemed to be isolated from the war. For many years, only the son he sent to the city joined the army, and most of the others were farmers. They were stupid and simple, and they might be suspicious because they could not see the moon in the sky one night, worrying about the punishment of the gods and the poor harvest of their fields. At this time, Samuel's role was reflected. He lived so long that the people in the village thought he was blessed by God. Therefore, he only needed to smile comfortingly and pat their shoulders to make these idiots quiet down and go back to their lives. He was even a barefoot doctor. People who lived long knew a lot of ways to treat diseases. If a child had a high fever, they would go to him. He also knew a lot of ways to set traps for hunting. It can be said that this long life brought him mostly benefits, but he still looked forward to death. The second volume of the fifth update is the story of the wizard, that is, the demon hunter. Chapter 33. Miracles usually happen at night. The bonfire burned slowly. Countless stars twinkled in the night sky above the small camp. Looking down at the land, he also looked at the slowly burning bonfire in the camp and the man who was dealing with the corpse. Shenyan was pulling out the tendons and skinning an ugly monster. His hands were covered in blood, but he didn't care at all and even hummed a song. It had been almost a month since he came to this world. He was wandering in this cold jungle. Shenyan could sense the human villages not far away, but he didn't want to disturb them. He lived alone in the jungle and was very comfortable. Every day, he did nothing but find some monsters to study. The ugly and short monster in his hand was trembling at this time. Its brain was exposed, and it even trembled slightly in the cold air. Its wrinkled skin had been peeled off, wet and steaming, and was thrown casually on the table beside it. Although it was in great pain, it could not move, scream, or call for its own kind. Okay, don't be afraid. You ugly little thing. It will be over soon. Shenyan gently patted its bright red brain and got a violent shudder. If he hadn't found dozens of human skeletons under the bridge where these guys lived, he might not have been so cruel. His attitude towards non-human races has always been flexible and changeable. In other words, if you don't kill people, I won't kill you. Shenyan knew that he was a human supremacist, and he didn't care. These things have ugly and ferocious faces. Most of them are very short, their teeth are extremely sharp, and so are their claws. Shenyan has no doubt that their dirty and smelly claws can disembowel those farmers with one blow. If there was only one of these things, it might not be scary, but the problem is that they live in groups. So he helped the local residents. Anyway, he had studied the monsters that were similar to griffins enough in the past few days. Shenyan hummed a song, and a shining magic knife condensed in his hand, cutting open the monster's brain lightly and accurately. It began to tremble violently, and its entire brain seemed to fly out from its half-open skull, and its eyes bulged out. Its long and narrow tongue stretched out of its big mouth, and it died in extreme pain. Shenyan was unmoved, and he continued to dissect the body of the monster that had just died. About half an hour later, he snapped his fingers. A curtain of water appeared out of thin air, allowing him to wash the blood off his hands and clean up the messy workbench. He pointed his finger and threw the body hundreds of meters away with his mental power. He was not interested in thinking about the fate of this monster. The animals in this jungle were not very friendly. Or rather, those who could survive in such a bitter and cold place, whether human or animal, should not be very friendly. He walked slowly around the camp and began to think about whether he should harm the four stone-like monsters again tomorrow. They had simple intelligence and were already suspicious of Shenyan's sudden attacks from time to time. Although he did not kill them, he was very keen to teach them how to do simple arithmetic problems. These simple-minded creatures couldn't even speak long sentences, but he forced them to learn arithmetic, and they couldn't be defeated. So they simply abandoned the cave and ran away. Shenyan laughed out loud when he thought of this. His weird sense of humor reminded him of a classic joke, but he didn't intend to tell it. After all, it was too pathetic for a person to tell jokes to himself. Even if he was trying to escape from the pursuit of the eternal heaven, it was the same. The memories of those angels were a treasure to him. He would flip through them when he had nothing to do, Just like skipping through a long and boring TV series with thousands of episodes, you can always find some new plots. He found out from those memories 3 weeks ago that anyone who killed an angel would be branded, but he himself didn't. It might also be because he didn't kill them, but ate them. Back to the point, just because he didn't check it doesn't mean it really doesn't exist. He didn't believe that he could kill 25 angels recklessly and continue to run around in the sea of stars. Sooner or later, the eternal heaven would find him. Well, it would take tens of thousands of years. It's funny, the 25 angels thought they had discovered an ownerless world, and they came here excitedly. This wasn't even an official mission. Moreover, because the distance they had traveled was too long, by the time the news of their death was transmitted back to the eternal heaven, according to the speed in their memories, it might be enough for a turtle to evolve naturally into a ninja turtle. He now just regarded himself as coming on vacation, to relax and study these local monsters. There is never too much knowledge. Shenyan returned to the campfire, where there was a recliner. It was made of wood, with soft cushions and foot pads. You don't even need to sit on it. Just looking at it will make you feel that it must be very comfortable. He lay on it, looking at the starry sky, and the campfire beside him burned slowly and crackled. It was a night that couldn't be more quiet, and it would be even better if we ignored the noise coming from not far away. Feeling disappointed, he opened his eyes in annoyance, and a blue light flashed in his eyes. The low-level eagle vision technique allowed him to see a group of people holding torches chasing an old man in the jungle. His hair and beard were all white, and he was holding a little girl in his arms. The girl was sleeping soundly, and even being chased by someone seemed unable to wake her up from her sleep. The old man was panting, and his lungs were protesting to him. A burning feeling came from his body. His old friend, who had been with him for who knows how long, was protesting to him in this way. "Old man, now is not the time to be young." The old man ignored him and continued to run. That speed was simply a miracle for an old man. The strong young men behind him could not catch up with him. They could only let him run around in the jungle and gradually lost his race. The old man, who was soaked all over, sat down against a very thick tree. He closed his eyes, his chest rose and fell violently, and he fumbled to put the girl in his arms on the grass beside him. The weather in Kajun has always been known for its coldness, not to mention running into the jungle in a wet single layer in the middle of the night. But more than his condition, the slaughtered village, and the people who were hunting him for some unknown reason, he was worried about this girl. He had been worried about her all his life, from his youth to his old age. "Oh, merciful Melitli, I pray, if you are watching me, if you can see me, this useless old man, please shed your tears of pity so that this innocent child can leave safely." He prayed to the goddess Melitli, a kind goddess who protected the poor, the homeless, children, and pregnant women. He had no choice but to pray to her. It seemed that the gods had answered the call, and a miracle really happened. A man in a black robe slowly walked out of the dark jungle in front of him. His black hair was draped behind his head, and an indescribable mysterious temperament emanated from the pure white light around him. Not to mention that face, the old man dared to swear by his own name that he had never seen such a handsome man even when he was young and hanging around in the city. Compared with him, those bards who were robbed and quarreled by the ladies were like bugs in the sewer. But, all these, compared with those eyes that seemed to be emitting starlight. "Gods, did you show up?" He stared at the man blankly, and even forgot to speak. "First update, sorry for being late. I will update as normal today. 5 more updates tomorrow." Chapter 34, First Arrival in Blavine. "Get up." The man walked in slowly, speaking a language he was familiar with. The old man tried to stand up tremblingly, but his exhausted old body obviously couldn't do it. He could feel the vitality slowly draining from his body, and he had no other choice. He grabbed the man's hand and tried to speak clearly. His eyes were getting darker and darker. "Please, sir, please take good care of her. You will be rewarded handsomely." "Long life," the old man exhaled with difficulty. "You can even live as long as me as long as you take good care of her. Please." His head tilted to one side, just looking at the sleeping girl, who just lost her vitality. Shenyan was silent for a while, and black magic emerged from under his feet. The soil flew up out of thin air and turned into a square grave under the tree. He buried the old man in it. The soil was covered again. There is no tombstone, so let the big tree be his tombstone. Shenyan left a magic mark on the trunk so that those scavengers and monsters would not dig up the body of this poor old man and eat it. He walked up to the girl and observed her carefully. She was wearing a silk dress that was washed very clean. The old man was only wearing a linen singlet. Her long silver-white hair was scattered behind her head, forming an inexplicable harmony with the grass. To be fair, she was very beautiful. She was a beauty, beautiful enough even to the most discerning eyes. But that was not the reason why Shenyan observed her so carefully. The thin but very high-quality magic formed a weak barrier on her body. It was indeed weak by Shenyan's standards, but it was enough to ensure that she would not be injured by swords or even affected by low-level magic. Shenyan pondered for a while. He did not choose to use his hands, but used magic to lift a strand of the girl's hair, revealing her pointed ears. Some kind of high-level elf that can make people live longer and have a magic barrier in infancy? Interesting. Very interesting. How could a race choose this way of growth? Where are your parents, little one? He picked up the girl with magic and cast a protective spell on her. He walked into the jungle with the girl, and the light gradually disappeared into the darkness. The forest was silent again. The next morning, the girl still showed no signs of waking up. She seemed to be unaware of the changes in the surrounding environment, but a strand of magic in her body wanted to enter Shenyan's body. He was awakened by this polite interruption while meditating. He thought someone wanted to invade his brain, but he got such a ridiculous conclusion. It seemed that it was her instinct to give some magic to the people who took care of her, so that they would live longer and be free of disease. You also have an intelligent parasite shell. What kind of strange race are you? Shenyan stared at the girl with a complicated look at this time, but he didn't intend to study her. Without her permission, he would not try to study a creature with intelligence. Well, do you want to eat? Shenyan pondered for a while, and he used the bread-making technique to make a fragrant white bread, and brought it to the mouth of the girl who was sleeping soundly in the tent with magic. She opened her mouth and began to chew mechanically. Shenyan was already worried about whether he would have to change her diaper, but this impolite worry was obviously unnecessary. The food she ate was quickly transformed into magic, adding to the thin magic barrier in front of her body. Interesting, too interesting. Alas, I really hope you wake up soon. Shenyan turned his head and stopped paying attention to this strange elf. He still had business to do. 10 minutes later, he placed a freshly made pot on the campfire. Shenyan excitedly took out a tender vegetable from his magic backpack, and then took out some noodles, eggs, fresh meat and seasonings. He even took out a ceramic bowl and matching chopsticks. He skillfully took the bowl of noodles he made and started eating. After eating all of them, he threw these things back into the magic backpack. Touching his stomach, he sighed. My craftsmanship has not regressed. Very good. Yes, his business was to make himself a bowl of noodles. This strange pursuit had been complained about by Strange countless times in the past. What he said was, as a powerful wizard, how can you cook for yourself? What would outsiders think of us if they saw us? Apostrophe. You can't have a barbecue in the library of the Holy of Holies. Apostrophe. His hoarse face would become longer at such times, and Shenyan had never told him that when he tried to put on a straight face, it would become even more ridiculous. It was as if he hadn't asked for another bowl every time. Shenyan smiled, and the camp behind him gradually disappeared in a wave of magic. The girl was lifted up by his magic, and after casting an invisibility spell, she floated behind him. He walked out of the jungle slowly. He floated on the ground and left the jungle at a speed beyond the comprehension of ordinary people. Many farmers who were working in the fields witnessed this flash of black shadow. Their fearful and vivid narration successfully won them a few glasses of wine in the tavern, and some even got the seductive eyes of the waitress. But this legend among the countryside was eventually no longer mentioned after a few weeks. Farmers see strange things every year. Some are true, some are false, but so what? They don't care at all. It's just a topic of conversation after dinner. Shenyan crossed the mountains, crossed the wilderness and several cities, and came to a small town by the sea. Most of the townspeople here work as fishermen. They live by the mountains and by the sea. It seems that this sentence is universal no matter what world it is in. He walked among the crowd, and no one noticed this handsome man. He stepped on the dirty mud ground, and in front of him was a hay trailer, and its wheels left long marks on the ground. The noisy voices echoed in the town, and the sea breeze blew from the port. Shenyan could smell the stench of tar and cow urine. A woman selling vegetables stood on the street and hawked. What a medieval town! If you ignore the obvious magical fluctuations in this town, his eyes turned to a tall tower not far away, which was built with smooth-cut granite blocks and topped with toothed battlements. It stood between the scattered farmland and crooked huts, independent of the town center. Yeah, rough, but very imaginative. He nodded, turned his head and looked at a man riding a horse with two swords on his back. There was also a donkey beside him, carrying a black cloth bag with dried black blood on it. Shenyan noticed his unique pupils and smiled with interest. Second update, today's update is over. Shamelessly asking for votes. 5 more updates tomorrow. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35, Demon Hunters are usually unwelcome. As usual, the first to notice him were the cats and children. A tabby tomcat was sleeping on a pile of wormwood soaked in the sun. But when he rode in, he suddenly trembled. He raised his head, let out an unpleasant hiss at the Witcher, jumped off the woodpile, and disappeared into the bushes beside him in the blink of an eye. A child in a dirty linen shirt was playing in the mud outside his house, trying to make his clothes worse, and he didn't realize that his mother had picked up a stick and was ready to give him a taste of freshness. But the next second, he suddenly screamed. His mother, wearing an apron and holding a stick, grabbed her son and ran into the house, locking the door tightly. Just because the Witcher passed by, Geralt ignored these reactions. The hay cart in front blocked the road, and he was too lazy to urge the horse to pass it. He just followed behind slowly. The woman selling vegetables saw the blood-stained bag on the donkey beside him and looked over curiously, only to see a black claw swaying up and down with the donkey's footsteps. Bony but sharp. She covered her mouth and screamed. Geralt glanced at her and sighed impatiently. "Excuse me, sir, do you have a minute?" A man's voice suddenly came into his ears. Geralt almost fell off his horse. His superhuman senses seemed to have disappeared at this time, and he didn't give him any warning that someone was approaching. Thanks to the sudden change of the Witchers, even if he was already alert in his heart, he didn't show it on his face. Geralt slowly turned his head and saw a handsome man in a black robe embroidered with gold thread standing beside him and looking at him. Geralt couldn't help but want to draw his sword. There were two things that caused him to be so impulsive. First, he found that the man was floating, and his feet didn't touch the ground at all. This was an obvious sign of magic, but the amulet on his chest didn't vibrate at all. Second, the people around him, including the villagers who gradually gathered behind him and wanted to see what was in the sack, had no reaction to this man. It was as if he didn't exist at all. Geralt was silent. The midday sun hit his face, and a bin-sized bead of sweat was rolling down his forehead on his weather-beaten face. "Don't be nervous, sir. I can see that you still have things to do. If you have time later, please meet me at the Tuna Tavern over there, okay?" The man noticed his expression, smiled, and then said politely. He turned sideways and made way. Geralt rode his horse and continued to move forward stiffly. As always, there were many carriages parked in front of the house of the local county magistrate, Keldamian. Geralt jumped off the horse, adjusted the position of the two swords on his back, and put the reins on the wooden fence. The crowd behind him formed a semicircle around the donkey. Even though Geralt was outside the house, the sheriff's shout was still clear to him. It was not entirely due to his superhuman senses, but because the sheriff's voice was really loud at this time. "I've told you many times, no, no means no. Damn it, don't you understand me, you scoundrel?" As soon as Geralt walked into the door, he heard the short and fat Sheriff Keldamian say this angrily. His face was red, and in front of him stood an honest-looking man, holding a struggling goose in his hands. "What's going on? Didn't I tell you not to bother me?" "Gods, is it you, Geralt? Am I seeing things?" He turned to the farmer and said, "Take it away, country bumpkin. How many times have I told you not to send me anything? Are you deaf?" The farmer stood there, mumbling incoherently. Lord Sheriff," they said. When he said this, he glanced at the goose, and then turned his eyes away as if nothing had happened. "We have to give the steward a little benefit, otherwise—" "Who said that?" "For the sake of the gods." "Who said that?" Kael'dman shouted. Who thought I would accept a bribe? I tell you, I don't want it. Get out of here." The man happily carried the goose out the door, and disappeared in the blink of an eye, without even closing the door, for fear that Kael'dman would change his mind. "Hello, Geralt." "Hello, Kael'dman." The sheriff shook the Witcher's hand, stood on tiptoe and patted his shoulder. "You haven't been here for about 2 years, Geralt, am I right? You can't stay in one place for too long, can you? Where are you from this time?" I think I said something nonsense." "It doesn't matter where you are from. It doesn't matter anyway." "Hi, please sit down, Geralt. Please sit down. There will be a market tomorrow, so this place is a mess." "How have you been recently? Tell me." The Witcher said, "I will talk to you later. I have something to ask you." Kael'dman, "Let's go out and talk." When they walked out of the house, the crowd of onlookers had already surrounded the donkey. The sheriff shouted for them to disperse, and Geralt stepped forward to untie the bag. Everyone gasped and stepped back. Even the knowledgeable Kael'dman gasped. "Gods, Geralt, what is this? A Kikaimer? Can I get the bounty?" Kael'dman used one foot as his center of gravity. He looked at the spider-like black mummy, the vertical pupils in its lifeless eyes and the needle-like sharp teeth in its bloody mouth. "Where did you get this?" "On the riverbank, less than 4 miles from town, Kael'dman." "Just over there in the swamp." "Someone must have disappeared there, like children." "Oh, yes, you're right, there were, but who could have expected?" Hey, what are you looking at? Don't you have anything to do? Go home, go home. This is not a show." "Geralt, cover it. The flies are all around." Back in the house, the sheriff walked to the table without saying a word, picked up a wine jug on it and drank it all. Then he sighed heavily. "No reward. I'm sorry, Geralt." He washed his nose and said gloomily, "No one would think that there is such a thing hiding in the swamp. Several local people have indeed disappeared there, but few people will stroll along the riverbank." "Why did you go there? Why not take the main road?" "If I take the main road, it will be difficult for me to make a living." "Kael'dman, I believe you haven't forgotten my profession." "Oh, yes, I forgot." Kael'dman suppressed the urge to hiccup and exhaled slowly. "What a peaceful place this place used to be. Although these damn idiots are all stupid, they are at least honest and upright. Even the little goblins rarely pee and milk, but now, a monster is right in front of us. The war just ended not long ago. Gods." He looked at Geralt and said apologetically, "I'm afraid all I can give you is thanks, Geralt. No one offers a reward, no bounty." "What a pity. I just need some money to survive the winter." The Witcher grabbed a wine flask on the table and took a sip of wine. He wiped the white foam from the corner of his mouth and said, "I'm going to Ispadon, but I don't know if I can get there before the snow blocks the road. Maybe this damn snow will trap me in a small town beside the Ludensky road." By the way, Geralt suddenly turned his head and stared at the mayor. His yellow cat eyes made Kael'dman's heart jump. "Do you have a handsome man wearing a black robe with gold thread here? He looks like he is from the east." Chapter 36 Study you. The sheriff scratched his face in confusion and said, "Why do you ask this suddenly?" "No, Geralt, there is no such person as you mentioned here. If there is, those women who gossip all day long will definitely trample down his door." "Okay, thank you." The Witcher nodded, and he stood up and prepared to leave. Kael'dman quickly pulled him aside and asked, "Can you stay in Blaviken for a while longer? You are going to spend the winter anyway. Why not stay here with me? There's an empty room in the attic. Why would you want to be blackmailed by those cunning hotel owners? We can chat, and I'd like to know about your new experiences traveling around the world in the past 2 years. I really want to, but what will Liboshi think? She was obviously indifferent to me last time." "Hey, in our family, Women's words don't count, but let's be quiet. Don't do that again. Are you talking about the time I threw a fork at the mouse? No, I mean you actually hit it with the fork. Isn't that interesting? Yes, it is interesting, but she doesn't think so. Don't do it in front of Liboshi. We rely on her for cooking. And, this, what's it called? The thing at the door? Kikumo, is there any use for you with it? What do I need it for? If there's no bounty, just throw it into the cesspool. That's a good idea. Hey, Kalak, Borg, Kerpeb, are you there? A town guard with a halberd on his shoulder walked in, and the sharp blade of the halberd scraped against the door frame, leaving a mark, but no one noticed this except Geralt. Kerpeb, find someone to take away the donkey, then put the Kikumo on its back and throw it into the cesspool. Do you understand? Yes, sir. But, Sheriff, what? Maybe before throwing this scary monster into the cesspool, what? We can take it to Master Ilian. Maybe he can use it. Kael'Damin slapped his forehead. You're quite smart, Karapeb. Listen, Geralt, maybe our local wizard will give him something in exchange for your dead body. Fishermen often bring him the strangest fish, such as octopuses, crayfish and prawn. Many people have made a fortune from this. Come on, let's go to the tower. Wait a minute. You actually found a wizard for yourself? Is he planning to stay here permanently, or just passing through? Long-term stay. His name is Ilian, and he has lived in Blavkin for a year. He is a powerful wizard, Geralt, you can tell from his appearance. I doubt that a powerful wizard would pay for a Kikumo. Geralt made a face. As far as I know, there is no alchemical formula that requires it as a raw material. Needless to say, Ilian will humiliate me. We witchers and mages have never gotten along well. I've never heard of Master Ilian humiliating anyone. Of course, I can't swear that he will definitely pay you, but it doesn't hurt to try. Maybe there are still Kikumo in the swamp. What if that's the case? Just in case, let the wizard take a look at this monster, and then go to the swamp to cast some spells. The witcher thought for a moment. Okay, Kael'Damin, but I have something else to do. Why don't you tell me where the tower is and I'll go there myself later? It's right next to the center of town, made of granite, very conspicuous. Okay, thank you, Kael'Damin. See you in the tavern tonight, or the Golden Court. Of course. Just watch tonight. I've won a lot of Gwent cards in the past 2 years. The witcher chuckled and turned to go out. The donkey was left there, guarded by 2 guards. While they drove away the crowd that tried to surround them, they also secretly watched the Kikumo. The Tuna Tavern was not far from the county governor's house, so he let the poor horse rest for a while. Geralt walked slowly on the muddy road and soon arrived at the door of the tavern. He pushed open the door and saw the man in black robe sitting in the corner with his back to him, drinking by himself. Geralt glanced around and saw that the tavern was very quiet at noon and not many people were around. The bartender saw him come in but said nothing, but just lowered his head and wiped the thick wooden wine glass. Geralt came and sat down opposite the man, and the scabbard hit the bench, making a dull sound. The man smiled, stretched out a slender white hand and shook hands with him, not minding the stains on the witcher's gloves at all. Hello, what's your name, Geralt? The witcher's hoarse voice was filled with undisguised vigilance. The man maintained a polite smile and introduced himself. My name is Shenyan, which may be a little confusing for you, so just call me he. Geralt nodded and said, okay, he. What can I do for you? The man's eyes lit up. He pondered for a moment and said with a smile, this is it, Mr. Geralt. I would like to ask you to assist me in completing a research. The reward is generous. As he said this, he took out a long gold bar from the sleeve of his robe. Geralt's eyes were fixed on the gold bar for a long time, unwilling to leave. He swallowed to moisten his dry throat and said, what research? Let me make it clear in advance that I will not accept commissions that are too dangerous. You, for a moment, Geralt thought he had heard wrongly, but he quickly stood up and said coldly, I'm sorry, I refuse. No, 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 you must have misunderstood something. The man who called himself stood up, stretched out a hand to stop Geralt, still smiling. I'm not asking you to drink the potion, or dissecting you or anything like that. I just want to follow you for a while to observe you, that's all. Aren't you a demon hunter? Sorry, I don't say this word very well. I mean, I just want to see how you kill those monsters." They sat back at the table again, and the man poured Geralt a glass of wine, but he had no intention of drinking it. "I don't understand," the demon hunter said sullenly. "What?" "In my impression, wizards usually don't have so much patience to communicate with us." "You, demon hunter?" "Ah, yes, you can think of me as a slightly different wizard." When he said this, his smile disappeared, but soon appeared on that handsome face again. Geralt found that he couldn't see what this man wanted to do at all. "No, I mean, if you have any request to us, you usually say it directly. It's not a deal." "Interesting. Do you have any covenant with the wizard? Do you have to do things for them?" "No, but you are much stronger than us." "I have reservations about this." "Maybe not much stronger," Shenyan said silently in his heart. "In short, the content of the deal is very simple. Mr. Geralt, I don't ask for anything else. I don't need you to pay anything, nor do I need you to bleed and sweat. Just allow me to watch you while you work. What do you think?" He put the gold bar on the table and pushed it towards Geralt. The Witcher smiled bitterly in his heart. "How can I refuse? I can't beat you? Well, anyway, I have money." He accepted the gold bar, and the two shook hands again. "Deal." Geralt didn't drink the glass of wine until they left the tavern. Chapter 37. Do you want to learn? I'll teach you. Although I would like you to start your research right now, the Witcher shrugged, holding the reins of the donkey in his hand and walking on the road. "But I'm afraid I have to deal with this Kikimo first." "Well, Kikimo." Shenyan looked at the huge monster that looked like a spider with interest. Its dark brown shell had a rough surface, one of its 4 long legs was missing, and its back was covered with 2 rows of spikes. "Why, you are also interested in it?" "But I'm afraid I have to send this thing to the local wizard's tower to let him take a look," the Witcher said casually. "I'm not interested in it. To be honest, I think this kind of ugly monster should be exterminated." Shenyan's words made the Witcher look back at him in surprise. He said, "Kikimo is ugly, but there are uglier ones than them. I don't think you have the time to kill them all one by one." "Why, you still take it seriously," Shenyan said with a smile, and he followed the Witcher with his hands behind his back. "Magicians usually don't joke," Geralt said. "Well, like I said, I'm different." Geralt didn't comment. They walked all the way to the granite tower. On a gray-white wooden door decorated with rose-colored patterns hung a huge door knocker in the shape of a flat, bulging-eyed fish head. It was biting a copper ring in its sharp-toothed mouth. Geralt silently gave a low score to the taste of this Master Rillian, whom he had never met. He walked up and said, "Excuse me, is Master Rillian at home?" After a while, the fish head moved its sharp-toothed jaws, sprayed a puff of water, and said in a dull voice, "Master Rillian is not seeing guests now." Wait, who are you?" The fish head's eyes suddenly moved, staring at the black-robed man standing behind the Witcher. Shenyan responded with an innocent smile, and he looked at Geralt inquiringly. The Witcher turned around in annoyance, intending to leave this inexplicable tower and forget about the fish head. A completely different voice suddenly came out of the fish head's mouth. "Stop. Please turn around." "Aha, it's you, Geralt. Who is the gentleman next to you?" Geralt glanced at Shenyan and decided to let him introduce himself. He made a gesture of invitation, and Shenyan smiled. He didn't say anything, but just stood there and snapped his fingers. Then, the door opened by itself, and behind the door was a thick darkness. Shenyan also made a gesture of invitation to Geralt. The Witcher didn't understand whether the two wizards were competing, but he was more concerned about whether the Kikimo could be exchanged for some money. "Gold bars can't be taken out in the tavern. You have to go to the dwarf bank in the big city to exchange them for coins." The fish head uttered a short whine and disappeared in a puff of green smoke. Geralt led the donkey and Shenyan into the dark tower together. In an instant, a new landscape appeared in front of them. The orchard was full of white and pink flowers, filled with the scent of rain. The colorful rainbow divided the sky into 2 halves, connecting the dense treetops and the blue mountains in the distance. This neat little house is located in the middle of the orchard, surrounded by dense hollyhocks. Geralt lowered his head and found himself standing in knee-deep time. Shenyan said in a critic's tone, "Pass." "What does that mean?" "It means that he is good at this kind of low-level illusion. At least he is not a liar who only knows 2 tricks. Let me help you check the goods." You're welcome. Well, although he said that he was a special wizard, they are no different in arrogance. Geralt thought to himself. A voice said, "Oh, what did you forget?" "It doesn't matter. Your Excellency, please come over. I have prepared good wine. It's in front of the house." They walked into the orchard and walked through the woods. Geralt's keen senses made him notice movement on the left. He turned his head and saw a naked blonde girl walking among the bushes with a basket full of apples. The Witcher looked at the girl's back carefully and stared at her. Shenyan said lightly beside him, "Don't look at it. It's a scarecrow." "What?" "It's just an illusion, my friend." The Witcher promised himself that no matter what happened next, he would not be surprised again. Finally, "Hello, Your Excellency." "And you, Geralt, my old friend." Strigub. Geralt was still surprised. In his long life, he had seen thieves like counselors, counselors like beggars, prostitutes like princesses, princesses like cows, and kings like thieves. But Strigub always looked like a wizard, no matter what standards and concepts were used. He was tall, thin, and a little hunchbacked. He has extremely thick brown eyebrows and a long hooked nose. He always wears a black robe that drags on the ground. Even today, he hasn't changed after not seeing him for several years. The sleeves of the robe are very wide. In his hand, he holds a long staff with a crystal on the top. All the wizards Geralt knows are different from Strigobur, but the surprising fact is that he is indeed a real wizard. They came to the porch surrounded by hollyhocks and sat down on a wicker chair next to a white marble table. The blonde girl holding the apple basket came forward, smiled, then turned around and walked towards the orchard with her waist swaying. Geralt still stared at her intently. "Sir, I'm sorry for not welcoming you. I wonder what you are doing here?" Strigobur's enthusiastic attitude made Geralt realize something. He didn't rush to talk about his Kikimo, but silently looked at the blonde who continued to pick apples in the flower field and listened to their conversation. "Nothing, I'm just wandering around." I understand. Someone as powerful as you must have his own purpose, and old Strigobur is just a second-rate wizard." "Ha!" Shenyan laughed. He pointed at the blonde girl and said, "This is not something a second-rate wizard can do, Mr. Strigobur. There is no need to test or be too humble. Just communicate with me normally. I am not the kind of person who despises everything after gaining power. As you can see, I am good at this aspect." He snapped his fingers, and the girl turned into a red-haired girl in a black tight leather jacket, with flaming red lips and a face more beautiful than any princess Geralt had ever seen, not to mention the figure. Just when Strigobur and Geralt both had their eyes wide open, they heard Shenyan say, "You have quite a bit of knowledge." Strigobur forced himself to come back to his senses, and he said dryly, Sir, please forgive me." "But how did you do that just now?" Shenyan looked at the old man, and he said softly, "Want to learn? I'll teach you." There are 2 more chapters left in the 3-minute watch. I'll take a break and have a meal in the evening, and then I'll write them out. Chapter 38, Stupid Mage Has No Meaning of Existence. Strigobur took Shenyan's words as a joke, and in order to change the subject, he turned to Geralt and said, "Let's talk about you, old friend." "Geralt, what are you doing here? Are you still killing endangered species for money as usual?" "How much did you get for this Kikima?" "I guess you didn't get anything, otherwise you wouldn't come to me to try your luck." "There are really people who won't cry until they see the coffin, right?" He looked at Geralt with a teasing smile. The Witcher was not angry. He was still looking at the red-haired girl picking apples and replied casually, "No, I didn't expect to meet you here at all. If I remember correctly, you should have lived in a similar tower in Cover before." "Ah, that was a long time ago." Strigobur waved his hand. He handed a cup of tea to the smiling Shenyan and said, "A lot of things happened after that." "Yes, like your name. You are now Master Ibayan. That's the name of the creator of this tower. He died about 200 years ago, I think. Since I have occupied someone's residence, even if the owner is dead, I should show respect to him in some way. You see, most of the locals make a living by the sea, and you know that besides this useless illusion, I am best at weather magic. Sometimes I calm the storm, and sometimes I use the wind to drive the cod farther away from the coast. I make a living by doing these things. This is," he said sadly, "all I can do. What do you mean by this? And why do you want to change your name? The Witcher finally turned around and asked with a frown. Fate has many faces. My fate is beautiful on the outside, but it hides a terrifying essence. Oh, her bloody claws have already reached me, Sturgober said in an Arya-like tone, and he looked up at the sky, pretending to be a wise man. Oh, you haven't changed at all, Sturgober. You are still the same, Geralt said sarcastically. He grinned and said, do you know that every time you put on this wise and meaningful expression, what you say is nonsense? Can't you speak normally? Why are you so hurtful? The old wizard said dissatisfiedly. He sighed and compromised. Okay, if this can satisfy you. I came here with great difficulty, hiding my name. I hid all the way just to escape from the terrible creature that has been chasing me. But this escape was in vain. The creature has found me. It is very likely to come to kill me tomorrow, or even the day after tomorrow. Geralt turned to Shenyan and said, now I agree with you to say that you are different from them. At least you will make it clear, Sturgober. You see, the world is like this, Geralt said. Traveler can see all kinds of things, such as two peasant families fighting to the death for a piece of land, and even inviting a passing witcher to kill each other for them. I don't agree. But the next day, the ground was razed to the ground by the men of the two earls. These people continued the fighting. I walked through the mountains and rivers and saw people hanged on trees on the roadside. Robbers held banquets in the homes of wealthy merchants, and his wife might have to tremble with fear and pour wine for those bastards with her back to her dead husband's body. That's not all, Sturgober. In the slums of the town, places that you mages never go to, you may trip over corpses every step you take. Either they were killed, or they starved to death, died of cold, or died of disease. I once received a small commission. 20 girls died in a brothel in one night just because they were sick. The owner killed them all at night and then closed the business for rectification. On the third day, it opened again. The Witcher spread his hands, not to mention the palace. People pointed their blades at each other, and at every banquet someone might fall down with a blue face and overturn the table. I have long been accustomed to death, so why should I be surprised by your death? What's more, it's your death. What's more, it's my death, Sturgober repeated sarcastically. I thought we were friends and was counting on your help. Ah! The Witcher snorted coldly with a fake smile. He said to Shenyan, the last time we met was in the palace of King Adinkover. At that time, I killed the two-headed serpent that had killed 13 people and was about to collect the reward. But this bastard jumped out and quarreled with one of his companions about whether to call me a charlatan, a brainless killer or a scavenger destroyer. In the end, King Adid didn't pay me a penny, and he drove me out and gave me 12 hours to leave the palace. Shenyan drank a sip of tea calmly. He commented, he is indeed a true friend. Yes, if their hourglass hadn't been broken, I would have exceeded the time limit. In that case, the king's guards would have come to hunt me down with swords, the Witcher said with a smile. But there was no smile in his smile. He continued to say to Sturgober sarcastically, now, you said you expect me to help you. You said there are monsters chasing you. What are you afraid of, Sturgober? Why don't you just tell it that you are a monster protector? You have been protecting them, you like them, and make sure that no demon hunter comes to disturb their peace. Seriously, if you say that, and the monster still cuts you open and eats your black heart, it will be too ungrateful. Sturgober was silent and turned his head away. Geralt laughed. Don't pout like a ridiculous frog. Tell me what is threatening you, and I'll see what I can do. Have you heard of the curse of the Black Sun? Shenyan was alert, and he pretended to listen attentively. Of course, but it used to be called Mad Tybald's fever. Geralt turned his head and explained to Shenyan. He went on to say, named after the wizard who caused the riot, dozens of girls from good families, even nobles, were killed or imprisoned in the tower. The bastard thought they were possessed by demons, cursed, or contaminated by the so-called Black Sun. Shenyan said, it's just a solar eclipse. The demon hunter slammed the table heavily, and he said loudly, that's right. However, the respectable wizard opposite us still swears that this is a curse. No. Sturgober also became excited. He stood up, walked around twice, and retorted loudly, Tybald is not crazy at all. He interpreted the text on the stone tablets of the caves, the tombstones in the cemeteries of the Wasgs, and the customs and legends of the cat-like people all mentioned the solar eclipse without a doubt. The black sun means that Lilith, the Easterners still worship her as Nia, is about to return, and mankind will face extinction. To welcome Lilith's arrival, it is necessary to prepare 60 women with golden crowns on their heads, who will fill the valley with blood. Nonsense, said the Witcher, it doesn't even rhyme. All serious prophecies rhyme. Everyone knows what Tybalt and the Wizard Council were thinking at the time. He showed rare anger, and no longer cared about the people sitting next to him. The man was also a wizard. He fired directly at all the wizards. You use the crazy talk of a madman to strengthen your authority, to break alliances, to destroy marriages, and to overthrow dynasties. In short, to make the strings of those puppets wearing crowns more entangled. How dare you mention this prophecy to me that every old storyteller in the market would be ashamed of? You can keep your opinion of Tybalt and question his interpretation of the prophecy, but you can't refute this fact. Many girls born after the solar eclipse have terrible mutations in their bodies. Who said you can't refute it? I heard it. Quite the opposite. I've been to an autopsy, the wizard said worriedly. Geralt, and what we found in the skull and bone marrow is indescribable. It's a kind of red sponge, and the organs are all mixed together, and some are completely gone. All the organs are covered with moving pink-blue cilia. The heart has 6 chambers, 2 of which are atrophied. How do you explain this? I've seen people with eagle claws and wolf fangs. I've seen people with more joints in their hands and feet, more organs, and more senses than normal people. This is all the result of your abuse of magic. Geralt sneered. You have seen all kinds of mutants. The wizard raised his head and stood up straight. How many of them have you slaughtered in exchange for money to maintain your career as a witcher? Some may have wolf fangs, but at most they just bare their teeth at the prostitutes in the inn. But some are born with a wolf's heart and can kill even children. He sarcastically said, those girls born after the eclipse are like this. They show their crazy tendencies without reservation, and their cruelty, aggressiveness, moodiness and debauchery have long been known to everyone. I bet you dare not say this to the priest of the goddess Melitli. Geralt sneered. What nonsense are you talking to me? You want to ask me how many mutants I have killed? Why don't you want to know how many people I have removed magic and got rid of curses? I, a witcher you despise. I have traveled all over the world, only to kill the horrible beasts and remove the curses from the poor people who were unfortunate enough to touch the magic items. He stared at Strugober closely. In turn, what did you do, great wizard? Strugober looked up, his eyes not on the witcher. We have used powerful spells on this matter, in different temples. We and the priests have cast them. But all attempts will eventually kill those girls. This only proves your mistake. Oh, you got the bodies. I guess the autopsy happened to be just this once. Enough. Don't look at me like that. You know very well that there was more than one body. We originally planned to destroy them all. We dealt with a few, and then dissected them all. One was even dissected alive. Ha! The witcher sneered disdainfully from his throat, and he could hardly suppress the anger on his face, which could even be called hatred. You sons of bitches, you slander innocent girls, make them homeless, force them to sell their bodies, and even let them die in the wilderness. You also hunt them down, dissect them, and experiment on them. Now you dare to condemn and slander the witchers? Oh, Strugober, one day you will suffer and learn your lesson. After he said this, he sat down and said no more, just staring at Strugober coldly. I don't think that day will come soon, Strugober said sarcastically. Don't forget, what we do is to protect the people. These mutant girls will drown the whole world in a sea of blood. So, you wizards are still holding your heads high, thinking you are flawless, but you certainly can't assert that you have never failed in the process of hunting these so-called mutants. Well, Strugober said after a long silence, I'll tell you the truth. Although it's not good for me, we did make mistakes, and more than once. It's too difficult to tell them apart, so we stopped eliminating them, and instead isolated them, using your famous tower. The witcher snorted. Our tower? But that was another mistake. We underestimated them. Many mutants escaped. Then a crazy sport began to be promoted among the princes, especially the young princes of lower ranks who had nothing to do and nothing to lose. rescuing the imprisoned beauties. Many prisoners broke their necks. As far as I know, the prisoners in the tower died soon, and you helped them. That's a lie. But they did lose interest in everything very quickly and refused to eat. The most interesting thing is that they showed talents and extrasensory abilities when they were dying. This further proves their mutation. Your evidence is getting more and more absurd. Is there anything else? Yes, Lady Sylvina of Narlik is an example. We have never been able to approach her because her power has grown too rapidly. But now something terrible is happening in Narlik. In addition, Ferga, the daughter of Evermer, escaped from the tower with a homemade rope and is now wreaking havoc in North Wilhard. Beniga of Talgo was released by a foolish prince. Come, now he is imprisoned in a dungeon, blind, and in the land of Targo, the gallows have long become the most common scenery. Oh, there are other examples. Of course there are examples, said the Witcher, such as Yamluk under the rule of old King Abrid. He has tuberculosis and has lost all his teeth. He was probably born hundreds of years before the eclipse, but he can't sleep unless someone is tortured to death in front of him. He killed all his blood relatives and executed half of the people in the country in a rage. Did you know this? He had a nickname when he was young, called Ruffabrid. Oh, Strigober, how nice it would be if the cruelty of rulers could be excused by mutation or curse. Listen, Geralt Number, you can't convince me that Tybalt is not a murderous madman. So let's go back to the monster that threatens you. You better understand that based on the first impression you gave me, I don't like your story. But I will listen to you clearly. Stop, both of you. Shenyan interrupted their quarrel. His smile had long disappeared. Although I have no intention of interfering with your local wizard's crude research in disregard for human life, it is obvious, Mr. Strigober, you and your colleagues have spent half your life persecuting innocent girls. It is undoubtedly cruel and stupid, and it is meaningless, he concluded. His words made the old wizard pale for the first time. Being questioned by a powerful person was more unacceptable to him than being scolded by 100 demon hunters. He trembled his lips and said, But, sir, you are also a wizard. Yes, but do you know one thing? Shenyan's lips slowly curled up into an icy smile, with an undisguised disgust in his eyes. I can tolerate ignorance, cruelty, and those stupid farmers who fill their basements with picked-up swords and go out as bandits every time there is a war, because they are born this way, and they can also. No one has taught them that they should change, he said slowly. But you, mages, it's different. Mages are different, he repeated. His tone was angry for the first time, which made Geralt look sideways. We have knowledge. We should make this world a better place and make life easier for mortals, instead of playing tricks, manipulating kings, and controlling the world. Although I understand that you may only be able to do this in your life, but those ordinary people should not and do not deserve to be your playthings. He stood up, and Geralt realized again that something might happen. This time, it might be quite bad. He slowly floated off the ground, and the manor with birds singing and flowers blooming disappeared in an instant, and they floated in the endless sea of stars. Geralt looked at the surrounding scenery in shock and fascination until Shenyan spoke. Do you see it? This is the world above our heads, and this is what mages should do. But unfortunately, you are just a group of lowly and inferior bugs who can't even distinguish stupid lies. Strigober, I believe you have good intentions, but you are too stupid. Shenyan stretched out a hand. Geralt had to admit that it was a slender and white hand, but at this time it held a ball of black magic that frightened him. For a mage, what does stupidity mean? Do you understand? Strigober was speechless. Shenyan said to him indifferently, as if it was not a person, but a wooden toy, or something else. For a mage, stupidity means death, and from a human perspective, what you have done undoubtedly makes you deserve to die. The ball of magic changed into a lightning after a change, and struck towards Strigober. They stood under the tower. Geralt smacked his lips. What a pity. What? His illusion. The Witcher gestured at the blonde's body curves and smiled. Shenyan rolled his eyes, and they slowly left Blaviken with the donkey. The extra chapter is over. This chapter has 5,200 words. So it's not too much to count as 2 chapters, right? Keep asking for votes, brother. If you think the author's writing is okay, Please move your fingers and cast your precious vote. If the result is not bad, I will continue to update 5 chapters tomorrow. Chapter 39. Don't be afraid of small evils. That night, we went to the Golden Court Tavern. It's not quite right to describe it as a tavern. This bar with a grand name is more like a small hotel. It looks plain on the outside, but it's full of the characteristics of a high-end hotel in a town. Of course, this is not a good thing, but then again, it's good to have a drink, and demon hunters are not picky about the environment. It's crowded and noisy here. The customers in the store have different identities, occupations and races, but whether they are locals or outsiders, they are all doing what they want to do. Dedicated merchants will argue with dwarves about product prices and loan interest even when they come to the tavern, and those who are not so dedicated will pinch the waitress's butt. Some local fools pretend to be knowledgeable in order to win the attention of young girls, but the girls' minds are not on them at all. They are busy trying to please the rich people, and by the way, they also sneer at these poor and ugly country bumpkins. The hard-working workers such as coachmen and fishermen are a different scene. They are drinking like they don't care about their lives. Several sailors stood on the table and sang the boat song. Shenyan listened with interest. The song was about the waves of the sea, the bravery of the captain, and the beauty of the mermaids. The mermaids in particular sang the description vividly. The rough voices of the sailors matched the lyrics and had a special charm. Keldamian and Geralt sat at the bar not far from him, drinking. The fat sheriff asked the bald innkeeper, "Listen, man, when I came in just now, I saw 6 people and a girl, all wearing Novigrad-style black leather clothes inlaid with silver. I saw them at the tax station. Tell me honestly, are they here with you now, or did they go to the Tuna Tavern?" The innkeeper frowned. He tried to recall, and said with a bitter face, "My lord, they are here with me." "From your tone, they don't look like good people." Keldamian snorted coldly. He turned to Geralt and said, "I have never seen any good people walking around with swords all the time. They are not witchers like Geralt." He asked the innkeeper again, "Where are they now?" "All in the compartment." "It seems that they gave you a lot of gold, and you are willing to give them the compartment." The innkeeper almost fell under the table at this time. He wiped the sweat from his face with his dirty apron and asked, "My lord, I didn't do anything. They don't look like good people, but they give money." Keldamian continued to drink at the bar. Geralt winked at him, returned to Shenyan's table and said, "It seems the situation is very clear. The memories you extracted from his mind are indeed true." He picked up a glass of wine and drank it all. The Witcher's face, which usually had no expression, was rarely gloomy. "What he did makes me feel sick." Shenyan was still listening attentively to the song sung by the sailors. Judging from the increasingly unbearable lyrics, it should have reached the final climax. He said casually, "Until his death, Strigober never felt that he was doing anything bad. In his mind, he thought he had just made a difficult choice. He chose the lesser evil for the greater good." For the first time, Geralt said seriously, "Evil is evil, no matter whether it is big or small, or not big. They are all the same. I am not a devout hermit, and I have not done all good things in my life. But guess what?" He drank another glass, wiped his mouth, stood up and said, "If I have to choose one of the two, I will choose neither." Shenyan turned his head, looked at Geralt, and cast a magic shield on him. "Don't think of evil as small, right?" The Witcher walked to the door of the compartment. He pulled open the hard curtain covered with dust and stains, and entered the compartment. 6 people were sitting at the table, and the girl was not there. A bald man with a disfigured face yelled, "What do you want to do?" Geralt looked around. His eyes swept over everyone's face, and said calmly, "I want to see the Shrike." A pair of twins stood up. Their hands had already touched the long swords on the table. Their faces were exactly the same, and they were expressionless at the same time. Their clothes, hairstyles, etc. were all the same. Even the 2 swords were the same. "Calm down, Will, Nimr. Both of you sit down," the bald man said, and he said to Geralt, "Man, we don't have anyone named Shrike here. I'm afraid you've come to the wrong place." "Really?" Geralt nodded. He supported the table with both hands, and continued, "Let me make it clear. I want to see the Shrike, Renfry. Of course, it doesn't matter if I can't see it, Just tell her that Strigobor is dead. After saying this, Geralt turned around and was about to leave, but then the conversation of several people inside stopped him. Who does he think he is? An albino? No, 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 listen to me. I saw this cat-eyed freak in front of the sheriff's house. He brought a monster and wanted to exchange it for money. People said he was a witcher, one of those mutant bastards, the wizard who casts spells for a handful of silver coins. Oh, gods, why haven't these damn freaks been burned to death? Hey, Cat's Eye, don't run. Tell me, did your mother hybridize with a monster like they say? Geralt sighed. He pulled out the sword on his back with lightning speed, so fast that only a silver light could be seen. Years of training and his superhuman physical fitness allowed him to turn around in an instant, raise his sword and slash down, and the sharp blade was accurate, cutting off the hand of the half-elf who spoke arrogantly to him. He screamed, but no one in the noisy tavern cared. The Witcher's eyes were emotionless, and he said in a cold tone, I won't kill you, idiot, but you have to pay for this. Do you really fucking think? The bald man swallowed back the curse halfway through his mouth, and a woman walked in. She was almost as tall as Geralt, with ocean blue eyes. Her straw-colored hair was cut unevenly, only reaching her earlobes. She held one hand against the door, wearing a velvet tights and a gorgeous belt around her waist. Her skirt was also asymmetrical. The left side fell to her calf, while the right side showed off her toned thighs in elk leather boots. On the left side of her body was a sword, and on the right side was a dagger with a huge ruby on the handle. What's going on here, boss? He cut off Several's hand. The woman was not moved at all. She said lightly, I heard what he said. Shouldn't he be punished for speaking nonsense to someone else's mother? Geralt wiped the blood off the steel sword with his sleeve, and he slowly put the sword back into the scabbard. He stretched out a hand to the woman. Geralt of Rivia, you are not qualified to shake hands with her, freak. The bald man cursed again. The woman turned her head and stared at him. The bald man immediately shut up and lowered his head to avoid looking at her. Geralt was very surprised, because there was something very strange in the woman's eyes. It reminded him of the light reflected on the blade, the wailing of the murdered, and blood and broken limbs. Okay, white-haired man. The woman turned her head, shook hands with Geralt, and suddenly put on a smile. How about we go to a spacious place to talk? Just you and me. She deliberately prolonged the ending tone, bringing out a charming tone. Chapter 40. Don't be afraid of small evils. The two walked out of the tavern and started talking in the alley behind. Geralt crossed his arms, looked into the woman's eyes, and said calmly, I know why you are here, Renfri. Strigobor is dead. Renfri raised her eyebrows in surprise, and she covered her mouth artificially. Oh, thank you, brave witcher, you saved me. You don't think I will believe it, white-haired man? She laughed wantonly, but the witcher's calm face gradually made her realize something, and Renfri's smile suddenly disappeared. There was no sadness or joy on that beautiful face, just a faint question. Is he really dead? I saw it with my own eyes. Take me to see. As long as I see him dead with my own eyes, then this matter is over, she said decisively. Geralt motioned for her to follow him. 20 minutes later, they arrived at the granite tower under the night. Renfri cautiously motioned to the witcher to open the door first. The witcher knew that her 6 companions had been following not far behind him, and he didn't know how this woman communicated with them. But he didn't care, because Strigobor was indeed dead. The witcher pushed open the door, and the tower was in a mess. Strigobor's cold body was lying on the ground, along with pots and pans, looking at the top of the tower with his eyes wide open. Geralt still remembered the lightning, but he didn't know why it didn't turn Strigobor into charcoal. Shenyan explained that it was because it was soul lightning. Geralt had never had much understanding of the spells of mages, but he was now quite glad that it was soul lightning. Otherwise a charred body would not satisfy this woman. Renfri looked at the body. She stood there and began to tremble, with hot tears in her eyes. She pulled out the dagger from her waist and strode forward, wanting to do something to Strigobor's body. The witcher stretched out a hand to stop her, and the woman continued to curse Strigobor, using words that made the witcher look sideways. She cried and cursed, Her voice was hoarse. She even wanted to throw the dagger in her hand and poke a hole in Strigober's body. The dagger clanked on the ground. After a few minutes, she slowly calmed down. Geralt let go of her and stepped aside. Renfri knelt on the ground, staring blankly ahead, and said to the Witcher, "Do you want to hear a story, gray-haired man?" Geralt crossed his arms and hummed, "You know, despite what I look like now, I used to be a princess. I had everything. Obedient servants, gorgeous clothes and shoes, jewelry, jewels, ponies, goldfish in the pond and dozens of towers like this. They all belonged to me, until that son of a bitch came. Then that lowlier idea ordered a hunter to kill me in the forest and take my heart and liver back. How great, isn't it? But you didn't." "Yes, yes, because the hunter raped me." Geralt lowered his head and fiddled with his wolf head pendant. "While he was doing his job, I stabbed him with my brooch and blinded him. Then I ran away." This is the end of a princess, with tattered clothes and dirty clothes. Then there was dirt, hunger, stench, and abuse. "In order to survive, I sold myself to those old tramps, just for a bowl of soup or a place to sleep," she continued. Her tone was flat, as if she was telling someone else's story. Geralt thought, maybe this really was her previous life. She touched her hair, pulled out a handful, with blood, and handed it to the Witcher for him to look at. "You know, gray-haired man, my hair used to be like silk and very long, but I couldn't even take a bath, and I had lice. I was forced to cut them off at the roots with a very old pair of wool shears. That was my pride, but now, my hair will never grow evenly again." She was silent for a moment, and tried in vain to push the ends of her hair away from her forehead. "I stole to avoid starving to death. I killed to avoid being killed. I was locked up in a prison that smelled of urine, not knowing whether they would hang me the next morning or whip me and let me go. But even so, my stepmother and that old bastard Strigober were still chasing me with poison, assassins, and magic. Eridia and Strigober wanted to poison you with apples coated with nightshade. A dwarf saved me with an emetic that makes people vomit up all of their internal organs, and I survived." "Was that one of the 7 dwarfs?" Renfri froze, and she suddenly laughed. "Oh," she said, "you know a lot about me. What do you have to say about the dwarves?" "They treat me better than most humans. Strigober and Ereshia hunted me like a wild animal until the day I became a hunter. Ereshia died in her bed. She was lucky that I never got to her. I had prepared everything for her." "What a pity." Geralt was silent for a moment. Then he asked, "Do you know why Strigober and the Archduke's wife wanted to kill you?" Renfri suddenly straightened up and drawled, "It's so obvious. I'm the heir. Ereshia's children are illegitimate children and have no rights at all. That cousin just wants her children to take the throne." "No," the Witcher said calmly. Renfri lowered her head, but only for a moment. Her eyes flashed. "Well, they think I'm cursed, contaminated in my mother's womb. They think I'm, what, a monster." "Are you?" For a moment, she looked helpless, shocked, and extremely sad. "I don't know, Geralt," she whispered. Then her expression became serious again. "Damn it, how should I know? My fingers bleed when I cut them. I bleed during those days every month. I get bloated when I eat too much and get hangovers when I'm drunk. I sing when I'm happy, curse when I'm sad, and kill people when I hate them, and enough." She collapsed to the ground, as if she had lost all her strength, and her tone became numb. "Give him to me, and I'll leave." "Strigober once wanted me to kill you." The Witcher changed the subject. "You promised?" "I'm not an executioner, Renfri. I kill monsters, but not a poor girl." Renfri laughed, her laughter echoing in the cold tower and on Strigober's body. "You, a mutant freak, you feel pity for me?" She stood up, threw the Witcher against the stone wall, and yelled in his face, "I don't need your pity. Do you understand? I just want his body. Give him to me." Even at this point, Geralt still did not lose his composure. He just gently pushed the girl away. "He's dead, Renfri. Look at his body. He's dead." Renfri whispered softly, almost whispering, "Yes, but I didn't kill him myself." She raised her head. Her original makeup had been ruined. She was crying, and she laughed indifferently. "It doesn't matter, right? Anyway, he's dead, and my life can't go back to the past." Geralt shook his head. He turned around and was about to leave, but Renfri called him. She tore open her clothes, revealing a spring scene, tears still hanging on her face. Her mouth was smiling, but her eyes were crying. "Come on, Witcher, don't you want to spend a night with me? Anything is fine. Gold, me, even other people's lives. Just give me his body. I just want this. Anything is fine, please," she begged. Geralt sighed. He walked forward, closed Rainfry's clothes, hugged her, and said softly, "He's dead, Rainfry." The girl finally burst into tears. The next day, when they left Blaviken, Strigober's body had been buried and not destroyed. It can be said that after all the bad things he did, it was a miracle that his body was still intact. Rainfry disappeared with her people after that night. Geralt didn't know where she was going, and he didn't intend to ask. The Witcher just wished her the best. He and his new companion rode horses and roamed on the country roads. Geralt was still riding his turnip. Every horse of his was called Turnip, even this tired and skinny old horse. But Shenyan's horse looked different, with smooth black fur, tall and strong, and looked very handsome. Geralt glanced at it calmly and commented, "That's a good horse." Shenyan pretended not to know what he was thinking, and smiled faintly and agreed, "Yes." 2 updates today, more updates tomorrow, and it is expected to be updated with 10,000 words. Stay tuned. By the way, please vote. Chapter 41 Novigrad. Geralt usually wouldn't choose to camp in the wild, because it was too conspicuous. Moreover, the special senses of demon hunters can allow them to enter a kind of meditation, so as to pass the time quickly, while ensuring that they are sensitive to the surrounding environment. So it didn't matter to him whether to camp or not. He knelt on the ground and closed his eyes, and the whole night passed. But now there is a wizard after all, so they didn't walk for long, just a little after noon. Geralt planned to find a clearing in the woods to set up camp, but Shenyan disagreed. He looked at Geralt, who had dismounted and taken the blankets off his horse, and asked, "What are you doing?" "Setting up camp. Are you tired?" Geralt's hand stopped and he said, "No." "Then why don't we keep going?" So they set out again. On the way, Geralt asked, "I thought you mages would get tired more easily." "That's sometimes the case, Geralt." "So where are you going?" "Novigrad." "We're going there to spend the winter." "By the way, let's see if there are any commissions in the city that I can take." "I have to state in advance that most of the commissions in that city are in the sewers." Facing the implicit reminder in the words of the demon hunter, Shenyan did not respond. He just turned his head to look at a round mirror that suddenly appeared on the branches of the trees in the forest and raised his eyebrows. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." "Keep going." They walked along the woodland by the sea, not taking the main road, but walking between the small paths. During this time, Geralt killed many water ghosts. These monsters with green skin had sharp teeth and claws, and they smelled terrible. But for Geralt, it was just a matter of swinging the sword a few times. If these things were not blocking the way, he would not even want to draw the silver sword to deal with them. The repair cost is very expensive. Even if he had a gold bar, he didn't want to waste it. Killing 10 water ghosts might not be enough to repair the sword once. Shenyan rode on the sturdy black horse the whole time, and Geralt looked at the horse with envy more than once. Such a good horse may be sold for more than 500 crowns in Novigrad, while a griffin is only worth 200 crowns, not counting the money for sword oil and potions. 2 days later, they arrived at the gate of Novigrad in the early morning without camping. This port city, known as the Pearl of the North, is magnificent and spectacular, and it is firmly protected by endless city walls. Many country people who come here for the first time may take half an hour to fully accept that there is such a city in the world. Not only that, the buildings here all have beautiful red brick roofs, and the streets are not full of mud like in towns. There are bright brick roads and hawkers everywhere. There are 5 city gates alone, and there are 12 brothels and 35 inns in the city. Geralt asked in the crowded crowd entering the city, "How is it?" "This is the Pearl of the North." "Have you been here before?" The black-robed wizard just put on a non-committal smile. He neither belittled nor praised, and talked in a rational tone. "No, Geralt, but this place is indeed magnificent and developed. I can tell from the length of the queue. I guess the gold coins earned by this city every day must be astronomical." The demon hunter nodded and said, There is a rural saying that street vendors in Novigrad can earn 100 crowns every day. When he said this, he shrugged. But if that's the case, everyone doesn't have to do anything else. I can sell my sword right away and sell vegetables, the wizard said seriously. If that's the case, please be sure to come to me when the time comes. I can create a clean water source to keep your vegetables hydrated. As they talked, the team shortened little by little, and soon arrived at the city gate. 2 guards stood in front of the gate, one on the left and one on the right, holding long spears and wearing shining armor. One of them saw Geralt, lifted his visor and greeted him. "It's you, Witcher. Do you remember me?" Geralt nodded. "Of course, Clarkson. I hope your wife is doing well." The guard grinned. "She is much better now. If you hadn't helped me find those medicines, I really don't know what to do. Come in quickly." "Is this your companion?" Shenyan also nodded and gave him a polite smile. The two rode into the city on horseback. Geralt swung the reins and approached him, whispering, "You'd better keep an eye on your things. The thieves here are also world famous." The next second after he said this, an elf in a light yellow dress in front of him had her things robbed. She spewed a series of different swear words from her mouth and chased after him. The guy didn't run far before he was pressed to the ground by 2 guards who happened to be patrolling here. After getting her things back, the elf kicked twice, hitting the bull's eye. The guard quickly stopped her and said, "Lady, calm down. We will sentence him according to the law." After the elf left, the 2 guards helped the man lying on the ground and groaned and took him away. Seeing this, Shenyan said, "I don't think this is a thief. Of course, this is robbery." "So, how many days will he be sentenced to?" Geralt glanced at the bulletin board on the street and answered, "According to the words of those in power, Novigrad is a free city. Anyone has the right to live here, including those gang members. Of course, the guy you saw just now should be one of them, so I guess he won't be imprisoned at all, and his companions will probably bail him out soon." "It sounds very free." They rode all the way to a spacious square, where people came and went. There was a scale statue in the center, and under it was a pool filled with coins. Geralt led him to the edge of the square, where a dwarf was waiting against the wall with his hands folded on his chest. On his side was a row of stables. Seeing the business coming, the dwarf's face quickly put on a smile, and he greeted with a loud voice, "Hello, customer. Do you want to store your horses?" Geralt nodded, and he threw 10 crowns from his arms. The dwarf stretched out his hand and caught it accurately, still smiling. "Okay, 2 horses, 10 crowns, 2 days. No problem, customer." The 2 got off the horse, the dwarf whistled, and 2 dwarf servants in cloth ran out of the stable and led their horses to the back. The dwarf who collected the money handed Geralt 2 round iron coins, both of which were engraved with the words Murray Stables on the front and the numbers 10 and 9 on the back. The dwarf said, "Then, please come and pick up the horses in 2 days, or continue to pay for storage. If you don't come in 2 days, we will keep them for another day." After saying goodbye to the dwarf, Geralt adjusted his worn leather jacket and said, "So, do you plan to take a comfortable hot bath with me, or go shopping on your own?" Shenyan knew what the Witcher meant by bathing, and he nodded. "Let's meet here at 7 o'clock in the evening." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42, What We Saw at the Temple of Melancholy. After temporarily saying goodbye to the demon hunter, Shenyan began to wander around the city alone. He could feel that there were many mages living in the city. Their undisguised magic was simply conspicuous. But Shenyan was not interested in looking for these colleagues to exchange some knowledge for the time being. After the incident with Strugobur, he temporarily had a low impression of the mages in this world. The sun gradually climbed up the sky, and he strolled on the road in the upper city of Novigrad. It was quiet and beautiful here, with trees and flowers that he couldn't name growing wildly on the roadside. The men and women who passed by were all wearing high-end silk clothes. As usual, they still ignored Shenyan. The black-robed mage shuttled through the upper city alone, and his eyes didn't pay attention to the magnificent buildings and the ladies who moved out the sofa to hold a tea party in the garden in front of their villas. Finally, he shook his head and turned away. He went straight to the lower city. This place is completely different from before. People were naked, the road was muddy, beggars and homeless people were everywhere. It was only noon, and many women in revealing clothes were standing in the shadows of the alleys to solicit customers. They smiled and responded to every man who passed by with a wanton laugh, but their eyes were deeply numb. Some men with short-handled hammers and daggers hanging around their waists squatted in the alleys, looking at everyone who passed by with ill intentions. There was only one exception. It was an old temple. The stone bricks had been through many years of wind and rain, but although they were old, they were not dirty. Obviously, someone cleaned it carefully every day. There was a statue on the stone bricks in front of the door. People who came and went would slow down and pay a respectful glance when passing by the statue, no matter whether they were men or women, or even races. The base of the statue was flat and made of stone. 3 women stood on it, a carefree and smiling girl, a mature pregnant woman, and an old woman with a hunched back. Shenyan stood under the statue and looked at it carefully. He saw a crying woman running to the statue of the old woman, sobbing and trembling. Touching the old woman's robe, she knelt on the muddy ground and murmured in pain, "Oh, goddess, please tell him not to hit me again." Shenyan stood behind her and could see the bruises on the woman's neck. He was silent for a while, cast a low-level healing spell on her, and used a little magic power to attach to her to ensure that she would not be hurt again. After doing all this, he withdrew the little trick and walked into the gate of the temple as if nothing had happened. Several maids in black were busy sweeping the ground, and he heard a vague sound coming from the back of the temple. A maid saw him and came up to him. "Good day, sir. What can I do for you?" "Hello." Shenyan pondered for a while, and he said sincerely, "I know it may be a little sudden to say this, but I want to ask about your doctrine." The maid looked at him blankly, and after a while, she suddenly laughed. "Sir, you must have come from a very far place, I can see that. Whether it is your face or your problem, this is the temple of the goddess Melitli. As for doctrine, we don't have that kind of thing. The goddess did teach us to be kind to others, tolerant, and helpful, but we have been doing this not because of her request, but because of her expectation, and we also hope to become a better person." The maid in black spoke slowly. The wrinkles on her face slowly stretched out during this speech, and a few strands of silver hair hung down her forehead. She continued, "Is there anything else you want to know?" "No, thank you." In the eyes of the maid, this strange man in black robe just walked in, asked a strange question and left. But for Shenyan, this is not just a strange question. He once made a bet with a devil. The content of the bet was, "Do you believe that no matter how bad the situation is, there will always be someone who can keep the good side of human nature?" Unexpectedly, the devil believed it. He smiled, looked back, and 2 stars lit up in his eyes. He saw the back through the wall in front of the temple. There was a small hospital behind it. Many female priests were busy giving free treatment to poor people who had no money to treat their illnesses. There were also many people who felt mentally distressed and were talking to a certain priest. They did all this without asking for anything in return. Shenyan felt that he must understand this goddess and her religion. A bald, thin man was humming a song and putting a pile of books on the cart one by one into different categories. His name was Bok, and he was the owner of this small bookstore. The bookstore was located in the Hierophant Square. It had no name and no sign, but everyone who came here had a deep impression of it. Unlike those so-called reading salons that follow the trend nowadays, this place is really just a bookstore. In addition to books, there are no other services. Ding-ling. The bell on the door rang. Bok looked back and saw a man in a black robe walking in. Bok nodded to him, wiped his hands on the white apron around his waist, walked up and held out his hand. "Good day, guest." Bok Tyrants. "Good day, Shenyan." After the two briefly introduced themselves, Shenyan said, "I want to find some books about the goddess Melitli and her religion." Bok laughed and pointed to a bookcase on the 2nd floor and said, "The 3rd layer of that bookshelf, the 13th book from the left, should have the knowledge you want. It's 25 crowns." Shenyan moved his fingers and the book flew down by itself. Balk was a little surprised. "Oh, you are a wizard. Why, don't wizards come to buy books from you very often?" "No, guest, not very few. You are the first one in the 21 years since I opened the bookstore," Balk said. "Oh?" Shenyan became interested. He touched the cover of the book, looked at the 2 lines of beautiful cursive characters, and asked, "What do you mean? This sentence may be a bit offensive. Please forgive me." Balk paused for a moment before continuing, "Because mages are usually busy getting close to the king and the mayor. Even if they want to buy books, they won't come to me to buy them." "I agree with the first half. As for the second half, didn't I come?" Shenyan made a little joke. He took out a white cloth bag from his arms, which contained the money he exchanged at the dwarf bank on the way. He grabbed a handful of money. "No more, no less, exactly 25. "Thank you." Balk took the money and put it in the corner of the cart without even looking at it. He hesitated for a while, but still asked, "I don't understand. As a mage, why do you want to?" "Maybe it's because I'm a little different." Shenyan winked at him and walked out with the book. Chapter 43 Goddess Merely. In the afternoon, Shenyan sat on a bench in a square and opened a book. The belief in the goddess Melitli is one of the oldest beliefs and the most widely spread at the time. Its origin can be traced back to the ancient times before human civilization. Almost every race that existed before humans, as well as primitive human nations that lived on nomadic life, worshipped such a goddess. This is derived from the primitive human belief in fertility, love, farming, stoves and homes, and pregnant women. This belief is transformed into various female images. They dominate fertility and reproduction, take care of farmers and gardeners, and bless lovers and couples. These different beliefs slowly converged and blended with each other, and finally these gods all merged into one and became the mother of all people, Melitli. Caring for the world like a mother, people worship Melitli and ask her to protect their children. Her priests preach love and peace to the world. They have many hospitals, shelters, and orphanages all over the world to practice their goals. The most important center of Melitli's belief is undoubtedly Elend, where there is a world-famous Melitli temple. The maids of Melitli usually enter the temple at the age of 14 to learn arithmetic, history, herbal medicine, medical and biological knowledge, and then choose whether to become priests of the temple. Not all priestesses will stay in the temple. Many young maids choose to wander to help women and children in various villages. The Temple of Melitli is a refuge for all suffering people. In this place, even if you are penniless, you can enjoy peace without being disturbed by the secular world. The herbs of the priestesses can not only heal your body, but their help can also calm your inner suffering and repair the wounds of your soul. Shenyan could see that the author of this book had tried very hard to describe the Melitli religion in an objective tone, but he still couldn't avoid being affected. In the last paragraph of the book, he made such an attribution, which undoubtedly defined the Melitli religion as the patron saint of the poor masses and women. He also saw a very interesting description that any local lord would not conflict with the believers of Melitli unless he wanted to be enemies with all the local women, even his own wife, because any woman would worship Melitli. He closed the book and put it aside. He began to think about what he was going to do next. That day, he said he wanted to research Geralt just as a joke, but he couldn't control the degree of the joke, so he made the Witcher angry for a while. Fortunately, the power of money is indeed great. He just wanted to observe how much stronger the Witchers are compared to ordinary humans. As for the silver-haired elf girl, he didn't care about her at all. He just threw her in his magic backpack and fed her magic at regular times. At her growth rate, it might take hundreds of years for her to fully wake up. Before that, Shenyan just had to treat her as a large-sized figurine. Of course, the kind that can't be touched. To be fair, traveling around the world is not what he wants. Who doesn't want to go home directly? But the more he knows about the knowledge of traveling between worlds, the more he can understand the difficulty of doing this. Before that, it seems that he can only drift like this. Be a stranger forever? The black-robed wizard squinted at the fountain in front of him, wondering what he was thinking. On the other side, Geralt was so happy. After he and Shenyan agreed on a time to part, he immediately ran to the bank to exchange money. With a large bag of money, He first ran to the blacksmith shop to ask the boss to repair all his swords. "Use the best materials for me." His tone at the time sounded as if he had 5 million crowns in his pocket. Afterwards, he did not choose a street vendor to cut his hair like before, but went to a high-end barber shop in the upper city to enjoy a haircut, shave and face washing service. The barber's skills were really good. He touched his clean face and felt the feeling of being rich for the first time. After that, it was the highlight. If you had been to Love and Flowers in Novigrad at noon that day, you would have seen a demon hunter sitting in the hall reveling. He was holding 3 different beauties in one hand, and he was unrestrained. At 6 o'clock that evening, the reluctant witcher pulled himself out of the land of love and flowers with difficulty. He said goodbye to the beauties who blew kisses to him, and walked out with a rare undisguised smile, with several lip prints on his neck and face. He even changed his clothes. He not only had a full bath and massage, but also changed into new clothes. Although Geralt was not used to wearing tights, the loose and comfortable robe on his body was really good. "It's a pity that I can't wear it when I accept commissions," he thought, "unless I want to be pierced in the stomach by a water ghost." Thinking of that scene, Geralt actually felt a smile. "You look very happy." Shenyan's voice suddenly sounded behind him, and the witcher's back immediately straightened up. He turned around in surprise. "Why are you here?" The black-robed wizard calmly pointed to his right cheek. "You'd better pay attention to your image, my friend." The witcher tried to save his cold image. He said, "I'm not like this normally." "Of course, you don't have money normally. Do you usually chat with people like this?" "I'm not like this normally." Yeah, Geralt said perfunctorily. He spread his hands and asked, "So, how did you find this place?" Shenyan walked past him, motioned for him to follow him, and casually said, "I think it's better for us not to pay attention to these details." "Where are you going to stay tonight?" Geralt turned his head and glanced at the oak door of love and flowers with exquisite carvings. If possible, he really wanted to live there, but what he said was, just find a decent inn to stay for one night. As they strolled in the night of Novigrad, they talked about tomorrow. Geralt said, "I will go around at noon tomorrow to see if there are any new monsters in the sewers of this free city." "Will you accept the bounty first, or kill first and then claim the bounty?" "After what happened with Blaviken, I think I should accept the bounty first." "I think so." The two chatted and came to an inn. This inn is located on the quiet farm Arrow Avenue and has a total of 3 floors. The brown exterior looks inconspicuous, and the warm orange light shines through the windows. They pushed open the door. Chapter 44, Sins of the Flesh. Late at night, Shenyan opened his eyes while lying on the soft bed of the hotel. He did not fall asleep, nor did he choose to meditate. Before, he closed his eyes just to think about something and wait for dawn, but the magic he just felt forced him to stop thinking. The magic broke out in the lower city where he had been during the day, gloomy and bloody, with lingering malice. Shenyan sat up from the bed. His eyes lit up with blue light, and his far-sighted eyes looked out the window all the way to the lower city. In an alley, a man in a brown and black hooded robe was holding a knife and blocking a woman in the alley. 2 blood-red tentacles stretched out from his feet, imprisoning the woman and making her unable to move. There was no time to lose. He immediately opened the portal, stepped in, and appeared in the alley in the blink of an eye. Sensing the movement behind him, the man did not stop his actions, but was one step faster. The knife in his hand continued to swing towards the woman's neck, but stopped the next moment. His body began to float. The woman fainted the moment she was imprisoned by the blood-red tentacles, which also happened to allow her to avoid seeing what happened next. The knife in the man's hand fell to the ground. He floated in the air and spoke with difficulty, but his tone was extremely relaxed. "You'd better let me go, mage." Shenyan frowned, took a step forward, gathered black magic power on his right hand, and took out the man's heart. Amid the splashing blood, the man's face was covered with a strange smile. "You shouldn't do this, mage." His limbs began to become twisted, slender and white. The handsome face gradually lost its human features, and the mouth that split into 4 petals was scarlet, dripping with blue saliva. There were ferocious horns and 4 scarlet eyes on the top of the head. It slowly stood up, and the indescribable monster faced the black-robed mage, spitting out vague and cold words from its mouth. "You will die soon, Mage, really? The black-robed mage looked at the monster with a look of disgust, and he did not explain too much. But he did not choose to end the battle at the beginning, even though he was clearly capable of doing so. Instead, he let the monster disappear in a mist. It hid itself in the darkness, moving at high speed in the mist under the moonlight, and its huge, ferocious claws attacked Shenyan's back. Dang! With a loud sound similar to the sound of metal clashing, the monster's claws collided with the black magic barrier. Seeing that the attack missed, it immediately escaped into the mist again. But the black-robed wizard did not continue to let it do as it wished. Stop! He recited an obscure language, which can be roughly translated as this word. The magic power imprisoned the surrounding space in an instant, and the monster was unable to move again. Shenyan walked in front of it and used his mind-reading skills to the fullest. The monster tried its best to resist, and it seemed to have good abilities in the mind. But it was useless, and all of its memories were still seen. This made the black-robed wizard's face put on a cold smile for the first time. You really deserve to die, a high-level vampire, right? The black-robed wizard pointed out the monster's identity with contempt. He took off his black robe, let it float in the air. He cast a spell on himself and also cast one on the high-level vampire. This spell is called Titan's Power, just as its name describes. This enhancement spell will greatly enhance the strength and physique of the recipient, almost comparable to a real titan. Are you wondering why your strength has suddenly increased so much? It doesn't matter, you will understand. He waved his hand to open the mirror space. Then, the fighting skills from Kamartaj exerted the power of 50 Steve Rogers under the blessing of Titan's Power. He punched the monster in the face, and it screamed. A piece of flesh on its slender cheek was knocked off alive, and hot blood spurted out. But Shenyan didn't stop at all. He swung another punch and broke the right horn on the top of the monster's head. He grabbed the horn, weighed it twice, and suddenly asked, "Is this how you tortured them, those people?" The monster roared and didn't speak. Shenyan sneered and said, "Not talking? Very good." The black magic changed the existence of the broken horn in an instant. The skills that had been demonstrated in Lavander's one-shot appeared again, and this time he was more serious. The horn was dyed with the color of metal, stretched, and spiraled, becoming a long nail. Shenyan's magic seemed to be free of charge. He threw dozens of evil-breaking magic circles up. To be frank, the nails that Jesus himself was nailed to the cross might not be as good as this one. He took the nail and inserted it into one of the monster's 4 eyes, then twisted and rotated it fiercely, and completely nailed it into its brain amid the monster's heart-wrenching screams. A golden flame suddenly ignited on its body. The flame of demon breaking was originally a poison to high-level vampires who were weak to fire, but due to the Titan's power, it not only did not die, but even slowly recovered from its injuries and the pain. Its only 3 remaining eyes stared at the man, and suddenly realized what he wanted to do. Shenyan looked at him calmly and said, "Yes, this is my goal." For the first time in his life, he begged for mercy. "I can give you my money accumulated over several centuries. You will be richer and more knowledgeable than the mayor of Novigrad. Don't you mages love knowledge the most? I can share the location of the library of high-level vampires with you, as long as I let you go." "Yes, as long as you let me go, I will leave the human world and never come back." "Ha!" Shenyan snorted and laughed. He pulled out the nail, and the pain in the high-level vampire's brain eased a little. It had not yet recovered from the pain, but it suffered a more serious blow. The nail was inserted into the top of its head, which was the gathering point of magic power. Its form gradually changed, and it became a naked human man with a nail stuck in his head. "Are you wondering why you can't use magic and have turned into a human?" Shenyan squatted down and said softly. The vampire looked at him in horror, and Shenyan raised a finger to his lips. "SHH, because killing you is not enough, Mr. Hubert. Don't you like people's praise for you the most? Don't you like to see people's high valuation of a handsome man with academic achievements?" "I want to destroy it," he said patiently. "I will completely destroy the Hubert family that you have spent 200 years to build." "You care so much about this surname, appearing in the image of grandfather, father, and son. Complete your studies in college. Coroner, you have a clear understanding of your perverted habits. Before I found you, You had killed 27 people. Don't try to quibble, Mr. Hubert. I saw your plan in your mind. You want to make a big plan, right? Be prepared, Mr. Hubert. You will die soon, and you will die without dignity. When the corpse collectors find your cold body lying in the alley the next day, they will find your home and count your belongings. Then they will find the souvenirs you didn't take away. Eyes, hands, intestines. Oh, maybe these are not enough. After all, everyone has some little quirks, and you are a coroner, but your diary is well placed in the drawer of your desk, right? Then they will find out. It turns out that Mr. Hubert, the respected scholar and coroner who speaks for the dead, is a complete monster. Not only did he kill 27 people bit by bit in 3 years, he also planned to kill 50 women in the next year to warn people of their sins. Unfortunately, you don't deserve it. The vampire's eyes had turned into despair, and Shenyan said the last sentence, and, seriously, who writes a diary? Chapter 45 Geralt's Commission. At 3 o'clock in the morning, he arrived at Hubert's house. This two-story house is located on Outland Avenue. The interior is beautifully decorated, and you can see the port and the sea through the window. Shenyan went straight down to the basement and casually broke the protective magic placed by the vampire at the door of the basement. It was dark and damp here, and the wooden shelves on the wall were filled with all kinds of human organs. The variety and number made Shenyan even regret why he didn't torture it for a while. He was not so impulsive at ordinary times, and his attitude towards non-human creatures was considered peaceful among mages. But when dealing with this kind of thing, he was too lazy to reason. There were 4 female corpses in the corner of the basement, all of which had their abdominal cavities hollowed out. The blood seemed to have dried up. They stared at the ceiling of the basement with lifeless eyes. One of the youngest even looked only in his teens, and his face was still childish. Alas, the black-robed wizard sighed for a long time. Flames emerged in his palms, illuminating the dark basement. The 4 bodies burned slowly in the flames. Their illusory souls emerged from the bodies, gradually dissipating with confused and painful expressions. Shenyan walked forward, picked up their ashes bit by bit, and carefully and patiently put them into a box he had just made, making sure that nothing was missed. After hesitating for a moment, he said, "May the goddess Melitli bless your souls." Then, he walked to the desk, opened the drawer, and took out a beautiful diary. He didn't even want to open it. What the vampire had done was disgusting enough after reading it once, and he didn't want to read it a second time. Then he spread it out and threw it on the table, and left. Oh my God. He looks so terrible. Who said isn't it? Hey, Jerry, do you come back? What is the fun of a kid running to sea? Believe in me. The noisy voice of people sounded in the alley, and the corpse shouted, "Look at the gods of the gods." Is it his anger's voice finally made people spread out? At least the sound of discussion is no longer so loud. The corpse collector used a shovel to crush the man into 3 parts of his cart. He has been doing this for many years, and the corpses have been less than 10,000. It was those mutations and hybrids. Fuck. Unexpectedly, the coroner turned pale and stepped back as soon as he saw the man's face. He pointed at the broken body and asked, "Where did you find him?" The corpse collector didn't understand, but he knew it was definitely not a good thing, so he said, "Sir, this has nothing to do with me." "Who said it has anything to do with you? Tell me where you found it." The coroner was almost angry with this stupid man. After getting the answer, he immediately reported to the guards. That afternoon, the people of the Chamber of Commerce learned about the death of the young and promising coroner Hubert. They immediately sent people to clear out the things in Hubert's house, taking as much as they could. 2 guys opened the door to the basement and they screamed. Geralt carefully observed the messy traces in the room. The man next to him touched his already thin hair anxiously, looking at the posture and wishing to make it less. Feeling a little disturbed, the Witcher looked at him and said, "Can you be quiet for a while?" "Who? Oh, me? Okay. The man took a while to realize that he was talking about himself, and immediately became quiet. Geralt looked at the messy living room again. Clothes and various plates were thrown all over the floor. In the mess lay a twisted, black and hideous arm. A lot of blood was splattered all over the living room, from the ceiling to the floor. The amount of blood was so large that he even suspected that 5 people had died here. But, apart from that, there was nothing. There were no footprints, no smell, no signs of fighting, only an arm that appeared out of thin air and a lot of blood. The Witcher, wearing a brand new set of studded soft armor, sighed. He rarely encountered such a difficult thing. The clues were pitifully few. He loosened the strap on his shoulder so that he could hold the silver sword behind him at any time, and then asked the man, "Tell me the details." The man said with a sad face, "I told you all, master. When I got up this morning, I saw these things at home. I was almost scared to death. I didn't dare to report to the guards. My wife said that we have to ask you Witchers. I searched for you for a long time." "Well, you did say that. Didn't you hear any noise in the middle of the night?" "I sleep very soundly, master, but you can ask my wife." After the man said this, he shouted outside the house, "Orella, come in, hurry up. The Witcher master has something to ask you." A woman in a long-sleeved shirt walked in, with chestnut hair and brown eyes full of anxiety. "Grand Master, what's the matter?" Her husband pulled her over roughly, and the woman screamed in pain. The man said, "Did you hear any noise last night?" Nothing except your snoring." The woman's answer silenced Geralt, who had already lost hope. He said, "My suggestion is to move out." Ignoring the man who got angry because of this, he turned around and walked towards the arm, carefully observing each finger. Gradually, a guess took shape in his mind. He stood up and said in a hoarse voice, "I don't want you to move completely. Just stay out for 2 days. A hotel, or your relative's house, no matter where I am. It's best not to stay here for the next 2 days. Then, what about you, master?" the woman asked. Geralt brought a chair and sat down. "I'll wait here to see if that thing will appear. Also, please help me call my companion outside in." "Okay," the woman immediately said excitedly after hearing this. "Oh, is it the gentleman in the black robe? I'll go." "Hey, what black robe? You crazy woman, come back!" her irritable husband shouted behind her. But the woman didn't care about it at this time. 2 minutes later, an oriental man in a black robe walked into the room and greeted Geralt. "The 5th update is over. Please vote." In addition, there should be 2 updates on Monday, Wednesday and Friday, and 2 updates on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday and Friday. If I'm in a good mood, I'll update it. If you think the author's writing is okay, please give me a vote. Chapter 46, Sudden Disappearance. Geralt sat on a chair, his legs raised up on the coffee table in the living room, flipping through a book in his hand. Novigrad Observations, The Darkest Secrets. The owner of this house is a businessman who is in the timber business. This business has been doing well in Novigrad in recent years, and the couple naturally moved into this 3-story villa a year ago. There is no need to say much about the decoration inside. In Geralt's opinion, if there were no scary bloodstains and broken arms, this would be a very good villa, which could be sold at least for a high price of 5,000 crowns. TSK, 5,000 crowns. How many water ghosts do I have to kill to make enough money? The demon hunter's mind turned to a strange direction. Although he had a book in his hand, his mind was no longer on it. Shenyan stood by the window, his hands behind his back, observing the people coming and going on the street, and casually said, "Do you have any idea about this commission?" "Honestly, no." Geralt threw the book aside and replied, "There is no smell, no footprints. There are no signs of fighting. The age of the bloodstains makes me suspect that they have been there for a week. I can't even smell the blood. So I have to wait here for a night to see if something strange will happen late at night," as he said. Geralt said. He stood up, his boots creaking on the floor, and he began to walk around, observing the details of the room until he was attracted by an oil painting hanging at the entrance of the stairs leading to the 2nd floor. It was a painting depicting the port of Novigrad. Even considering the Witcher's character of not being interested in art, it was a good painting. He walked over, stood in front of the painting with his arms folded, and said, "How much money did these merchants make? This house furniture, porcelain shipped from the East, and this oil painting. God, life is really unfair, don't you think?" "Yeah," Shenyan said softly, his tone gentle. Geralt, who had his back to him, suddenly noticed something wrong, and a certain feeling pierced his brain. He seemed to be unguarded, but in fact he had already pinched the Ken seal with his right hand. A rotating orange streamer appeared on him. The next second, the Witcher drew his sword and turned around. The action was done in one go, but no attack came. However, there was no one by the window at this time, and the black-robed wizard disappeared. What? Geralt shouted loudly. He was not sure if this was some kind of prank by the wizard, although in Geralt's opinion, he was not the kind of person who would do such a thing. At the same time, he felt an ambiguous breath on his neck, and the Witcher's face twitched. Without any hesitation, he turned around again and slashed the wall with a powerful and heavy blow. The blade of the sword cut a deep crack in the wall. Amid the flying wood chips, the demon hunter tensed all his muscles, but nothing happened. Just like before, there was nothing there, and the wolf head pendant on his chest did not even vibrate. A drop of cold sweat slid down his forehead. The demon hunter realized the seriousness of the problem at this time. Yes, they are monster killers. They make a living by doing this, and they will die by doing this. Geralt is the most outstanding among them. He has killed many dangerous monsters, but no matter whether it is a wyvern, a petrified chicken snake, or a griffin, they will bleed because of the slashing of the silver sword. Even the difficult spirits can be killed by spirit oil, the sign of Arden, and the alchemical bomb. But what if it is a monster that cannot be attacked? We all know that to kill a creature, you must first make it bleed. If you can't do this, then killing it is just nonsense. A huge force suddenly attacked, and the shield formed by the Ken seal was shattered in an instant, causing Geralt to free fall in the house. He was hit hard against the wall, and the silver sword fell to the ground. The Witcher pinched a new Ken seal again before he got up. The set of studded soft armor on his body was indeed made of solid materials and exquisite craftsmanship, but it did not relieve him from the pain. He gritted his teeth and rolled up, picked up the sword, and scanned the cat's eyes, looking for traces that the attacker might have left. But he found nothing, except for the traces left by his sword just now and the mess left by being hit. There was nothing. It was even deadly quiet. The Witcher suddenly realized that something was wrong. This house was located next to the Hierophant Square, in the center of Novigrad. Even in the middle of the night, it couldn't be so quiet. He looked back at the window, and the scene there had disappeared, just like a painter erased an unfinished, unsatisfactory semi-finished product that he had not yet completed, leaving only a void of darkness. And this room without candles was full of light. Damn it! Geralt was calmer at this moment. He made the Yrden seal and placed it under his feet. This is a magic trap set on the ground or floor. The lavender talisman appeared on the ground for a moment and then disappeared. He stood there with a serious expression and tense muscles, alert. On the other side, Shenyan turned his head. Just now, a dark magic flashed in this room. The speed was so fast that he almost didn't react. The black-robed wizard used his mental power to cover the whole room the moment he turned his head, but he didn't find anything unusual. He moved his fingers again and carefully cast 5 soul protection spells on himself. There was no one where his demon hunter companion had just stood. On the contrary, the exquisite oil painting on the wall had some changes. The painter's painting skills are lifelike. The busy port of Novigrad in the early morning appears full of vitality in his painting. Passers-by, ships, unloading workers and fishermen preparing to go out to sea together constitute this painting. There is no doubt that this is a masterpiece. However, this masterpiece was destroyed by the sudden appearance of a white-haired demon hunter. Geralt's face looked very serious in the painting. He stood in the crowd, holding a sword in one hand and the other on his back. Wearing the studded soft armor, he posed as if he was about to swing the blade. Shenyan stared deeply at the painting and felt difficult for the first time. There is no doubt that this is an invitation, and the invitation is the life of the demon hunter. He did not hesitate, let go of his mind, and gently touched the painting with his mental power. The surrounding scenery changed rapidly, as if thrown into a whirlpool. Complex and disgusting color blocks kept emerging. He frowned and tried to distinguish the traces left by the initiator in these color blocks. This was not difficult, but disgusting. Not long after, he also disappeared from the spot. Chapter 47 Gontarodim and Leland Gaunter. Sometimes, silence can mock people. Just like now, the man opposite Shenyan has been chattering for half an hour. He is not good-looking, with a beard, short hair, and a mysterious smile on his face. They stood in a black room full of mirrors, reflecting the figures of the two of them. The man introduced himself politely at the beginning. He called himself Gontodim, a traveling merchant who provided people with what they needed most. However, Shenyan ignored him. He just stood there expressionlessly, watching Gontodim speak eloquently. Gontodim didn't seem to care about Shenyan's silence. He spoke eloquently, talking about wealth, status, power, knowledge, and even began to talk about the eternal enemy of mankind, death. As long as you are willing, sir, I can help you escape death. Gontodim smiled mysteriously. I don't need your help, Shenyan said. So, what about the coordinates of your hometown? The next sentence he said made the black-robed wizard narrow his eyes, and Shenyan also laughed. The two of them faced each other in the mirror. You don't want to say the next sentence, believe me, but even if I say it, you can't do anything to me, Mr. He. Gontodim never lost his politeness. He still kept smiling. I hold the opposite opinion, Shenyan said lightly. We have met before? I believe you will not forget it. Really? Leland Gaunt. Ah, you guessed it right. Gontodim clapped his hands happily. His figure began to lengthen, and gradually turned into another person in the mirror, a tall man in a suit with deep blue eyes. At first glance, even unbelievably tall, he spoke in a completely different voice, and the only thing in common with Gontodim was that they were both polite. Long time no see, sir. A sarcastic smile hung on Shenyan's lips. It seems that the failure of Castle Rock did not make you face the reality, Leland Gaunt. You must be very proud of exercising your duty between different worlds and playing with these mortals. Leland Gaunt bowed slightly and made an elegant bow. Yes, sir, I am very proud of this. He stood up and unzipped the pocket of his suit, and countless screams came out of it, accompanied by sporadic flames and the smell of sulfur. Shenyan glanced at his pocket with undisguised hatred on his face. It seems that you still haven't let them go. Of course, sir. Leland Gaunt grinned. His teeth were sharp and yellow. They opened and closed while he spoke. His lips and teeth collided, and red sparks fell to the ground. Mr. Allen and Miss Polly thought that with the help of a young wizard they could expel the devil and save their town from its clutches. They did succeed only at that moment. I guess you must not know, sir, they made a deal with me. And of course their souls will belong to me. When he said the 4 words belong to me, his face turned horrible in the mirror. His dark and scaly face was filled with undisguised greed and malice, and his eyes were 2 points of pure fire. When he spoke again, his voice was close to a roar. The souls of everyone in that town are mine. Mine. Do you understand? You damn wizard. They made a deal with me, and their souls are mine. There is no such thing as buying and selling souls in the laws of Castle Rock. But it is clearly written in the rules of Camartage, Leland Gaunt. Shenyan said softly. Demons should be expelled from the world. The Ancient One is dead. Leland Gaunt replied coldly. Yes. Shenyan suddenly laughed, and his smile was so bright that Leland Gaunt felt ridiculous. What are you laughing at? I guess you must have looked very funny when you were driven out of our world by the Ancient One. Thinking of this, I want to laugh. It seems that you haven't figured out the situation yet. Leland Gaunt grinned, his teeth sticking out, and he stretched out his right hand, and a mirror emerged. In the mirror lay a white-haired demon hunter, wielding a sword and fighting an imaginary monster in the dark. This time, our bet will not be disturbed by the Ancient One, and you, sir, you must play by my rules. He became polite again, as if the previous anger had never existed. Stop pretending to be polite. You twisted and lowly thing. Even the worms in hell are more pleasing to the eye than you. Shenyan didn't care about his threat at all. He sneered and cursed, making Leland Gaunt's expression a little unsustainable. The corner of his eye twitched and he said, Okay. It seems that some people won't cry until they see the coffin. As he said that, he was about to clench the mirror to give the demon hunter some fun. But he found that he couldn't make a fist no matter what. Isn't it strange? You haven't been back for almost 10 years after being expelled, Leland Gaunt. For a demon like you who can travel between worlds, 10 years is nothing. But for a human like me, a lot of things can happen in 10 years. Even enough to make me as strong as Ancient One. Shenyan's eyes lit up with pure white light, and for a moment, his eyes seemed like two tiny stars that were exploding. "You can't do that!" Leland Gaunt began to scream. He could accept failure, but he couldn't accept being defeated by someone he regarded as a bug. And twice, although the first time he was defeated by a trick, this time, he had sensed the arrival of the wizard and planned to come to get back at him. But he didn't expect that he had already. Leland Gaunt regretted it so much that his intestines would turn green, if he had any. "Say something else. Why do you always say that this is impossible?" Shenyan laughed, and he swung out with a palm, using the pure camouflage fighting technique in the way of the Ancient One, hitting Leland Gaunt's face. It made his face melt and deform, like plasticine deformed under the fist emitting white light. Leland Gaunt's reaction to this was to fall to the ground, and he looked at Shenyan blankly as if he hadn't reacted. Shenyan understood this reaction. Demons were like this. They hadn't tasted the taste of losing for so long that they forgot how to react when they lost. "Now let's try this. Ancient One helped me with this punch back then. Now I want to try it myself." Shenyan laughed happily and began to beat the demon who was obsessed with mortal souls. In fact, the saying about Gauntodym, the true body of Mirror Master, has been around for a long time. Some people guessed that he was a god based on the abbreviation of his name, God, while others said that he was a demon from outside the domain. But according to the chief writer of CDPR, his image came from the classic character image of Leland Gaunt in Stephen King's novel Necessities Store. For convenience, I will simply set the two to be the same person, demon. It is worth mentioning that if you have watched Rick and Morty, I remember that there was also a demon merchant who sold things people needed in one episode, and it was obviously Leland Gaunt. In addition, all Stephen King's novels are highly recommended. He is simply a god in my heart. Necessities Store is undoubtedly a classic. Needless to say, the gossip is over, and there will be 5 more tomorrow, and I will ask for votes by the way. Chapter 48 Complete Destruction. After a while, Shenyan picked up the mirror from the side of Leland Gaunt, who was beaten into a puddle of mud. He looked at it. The condition of the Witcher was not good, but not bad either. Leland Gaunt just wanted to torture him. Geralt in the mirror was still swinging his sword. As far as the Witcher's physical strength was concerned, he had not reached his limit, but it was not much away. He had been fighting invisible monsters in that room for a long time. He crushed the mirror, and his magic gently removed the magic on it. A flash of white light passed, and the Witcher holding a silver sword jumped out of it. He looked at Shenyan, then at the puddle of mud on the ground, still holding the sword. "What's going on?" "It's hard to explain to you." The black-robed wizard pointed at the puddle of mud and introduced him. "Gauntodym, the master of mirrors, the man of glass, and the one who made you fight against the air in that room." "Air? Oh, damn it." The Witcher glanced at him and put the silver sword back into the scabbard behind him. He adjusted his shoulder straps and said, "Never heard of him." "You don't know that he's normal, Geralt." The wizard walked to the mud and threw a ball of fire. The foul-smelling smoke filled the entire black room. The Witcher frowned uncomfortably, but the wizard remained calm. He said, "This guy is a demon." "Then I can understand." The Witcher immediately understood. He had read about demons. People usually call deer-headed monsters or fenth monsters demons. But real demons have been recorded in the books of wizards and witchers. Demons refer to those beings from other time and space planes or worlds. They can exist in their own form, or possess animals or intelligent creatures. There is a spell to summon demons called summoning magic, or demonology, which is a spell strictly prohibited by both the priest and the warlock brotherhood. Demons do not seem to be a single species or race, but a general term for a class of creatures with common characteristics, because each of them is very different. Only a very small number of demon invasions have been recorded in history, but without exception, they all caused very terrible consequences. Shenyan snapped his fingers, and the surrounding scenery changed again. They returned to the room in an instant. The black-robed wizard looked very relaxed and sat directly on the merchant's soft sofa. Geralt has lived for a long time, so he could see that the wizard had something to say. So the demon hunter leaned against the wall with his arms folded across his chest, using his right foot as a support, standing leisurely, waiting for the black-robed wizard to speak. "I've seen him before," Shenyan said. That was not long after I started learning magic. The wizard lowered his head, and Geralt could not see his expression. That bastard appeared in a town as a businessman. The town was quiet and everyone was kind. He opened a store selling necessities there. Listen to the name. Who can come up with such a name? In short, the townspeople bought what they needed from him, what they wanted most. However, the price was their souls, and they didn't know it. But I know that he had carefully planned a disaster. When he thought the transaction should be over, the townspeople would start killing each other, and he would take their souls among the blood and broken limbs on the ground. I was the only one there at the time. Although my teacher didn't allow me to act on my own, I couldn't sit idly by and watch innocent people die, so I did my best to stop him. Some other things happened in the middle. The wizard raised his head. The sunlight from the window only illuminated the lower half of his face. His black eyes were hidden in the darkness. The Witcher saw a pair of gems shining in the darkness and heard the wizard's whisper. He read my memory and wanted to seduce me, and he almost succeeded. Geralt, just a little bit. I would have exchanged my soul and the souls of the entire town for an illusory possibility. The Witcher nodded with some empathy. He thought of something else and said, well, I also hate the feeling of being read. The black-robed wizard glanced at him and stood up. He walked past the Witcher. It seems that your commission may fail, Geralt. The Witcher followed him and prepared to walk out of the house. He looked back and the twisted arm had disappeared. It doesn't matter, at least I got half the money. In the next 2 days, Geralt first went to explain to the couple that the evil spirits that troubled them had been eliminated, and he also solemnly asked the man to put 2 pots of flowers in front of the door after returning home, saying that this was the follow-up of the exorcism ceremony. But he didn't take the remaining half of the money. The merchant's wife said goodbye to them reluctantly. It was hard to tell what she was reluctant to part with. After that, he took another commission, which was very simple, to clean up the water ghosts. But it was also difficult. A lone water ghost is not dangerous. 3 or 5 may be a bit tricky, and more than 10 require great caution. These annoying monsters have bounties all over the world. They are usually not expensive, but people are killed by them every day and used as food. Geralt killed more than 20 water ghosts in Novigrad's huge sewers, and the brand new soft armor became dirty between rolling and dodging again and again. He knew that the money earned from this order was not much, not even enough to pay for the repair of the armor. Facing the wizard's question, the Witcher just shrugged and said, "That's how the world is. There aren't that many dangerous monsters waiting for you to kill under the city. Most of the time I just kill water ghosts and ghouls." The two walked out of the sewer, and the Witcher was carrying a smelly sack full of water ghost heads. He was ready to collect the reward. He gave a complicated look to the black-robed wizard who was floating the whole time. "At least you are no different from most wizards in terms of cleanliness." "Ah, don't be so mean, Geralt. I believe that if you have a choice, you won't want to run to the sewer. Look at yourself, you stink now," the Witcher said expressionlessly. "Yes, I know." They walked through the low shanty town and through the heads of water ghosts on the tax collector's table. The tax collector was a very serious-looking man wearing round-framed glasses. Facing the horrible stench in the sack, he actually poured out all the heads and began to count them one by one. After counting, he took out 100 crowns and handed them to Geralt, nodding to him. "Here they are, Witcher. 20 water ghosts, 5 crowns each, a total of 100 crowns. The Witcher opened the small bag he handed over, took a look, and put it in his pocket. In fact, he didn't need to accept any more commissions. The gold bar given by the wizard was enough for him to spend the winter comfortably in Novigrad, but if he wanted to do something else, the money would not be enough. You know what I mean. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49, The Painter Who Painted the Demon Hunter. This matter is not over yet. Cronin, just stand there and listen to me. You are not over yet for painting my wife without my consent. The man in a black silk shirt shouted angrily at the young man opposite him. and then took out a dagger and rushed towards the young man. He stood there blankly with a paintbrush in his hand. Geralt guessed that he should be a young painter or an apprentice. These people who collect folk customs can be seen in various squares in Novigrad. They often hold a drawing board and a sketch pen and paint for a whole day. From his personal point of view, the Witcher thinks that they are of no use to society at all, and because of the last painting, he still has some trauma about it. It is already the end of December in 1233, and it will soon be 1234. Frankly speaking, Geralt has been living a good life in Novigrad these days. Sometimes he misses Vesemir, Eskel and the annoying Lambert. The Witcher doesn't know how they are doing now, but he hopes that everything is well for them. The members of the Wolf School are so few that they can't afford any losses. However, in his heart, there is a rational part that always reminds him, no demon hunter can live out his old age in peace. Live with the sword, die with the sword. They were created by Arzu and his teacher Cosimo Malaspina hundreds of years ago, and their fundamental purpose was to kill monsters. At that time, due to the intersection of the celestial spheres, the world became broken and shattered. New monsters appeared every day, and people died like wheat. At that time, even if you just went out for a walk, you might be caught and eaten by a griffin that fell from the sky. So demon hunters came into being. Superhuman physical fitness and reaction speed several times that of ordinary people, night vision, and immunity to diseases. In addition, all demon hunters have been strictly trained step by step since childhood, and each of them is a well-trained monster killer. Assisted by silver swords, magic signs and alchemical bombs, they can be invincible in the battle with monsters, and they will be sung by bards as the protectors and heroes of mankind. That being said, no one knows whether the demon hunter cult in history is really as chivalrous as Alzu imagined. Time took away everything, leaving behind several divided schools. Today, because of long-standing prejudice, provocations and false rumors, the profession of demon hunter is feared by the world, and later even hated. The extreme persecution and massacre that eventually led to the almost extinction of demon hunters. Only a very small number of demon hunters survived the world. And now they still insist on this special job, coming and going in every corner of the world, killing monsters for a meager bounty. Sometimes, Geralt would ask himself, why not take assassination commissions like the cat school? You know, killing people is not only easier than killing monsters, but the amount will also be several times or even dozens of times, and you will live much better than now. At least he wouldn't have to argue with the tax collector and the village chief for a few cents like a beggar, nor would he have to risk his life to kill monsters with a sword in the cold or hot weather, and he wouldn't be scolded as a mutant freak. But he just couldn't do it. Just like now, Geralt stretched out his hand at lightning speed, accurately blocked the right hand of the man in the black silk shirt, knocked the dagger in his hand to the ground, and then kicked him to the ground. "Are you okay?" his low voice sounded. The young man didn't seem to realize what happened. He stared at the Witcher in a daze. It took a long time for him to come back to his senses and laughed happily. "Ah, hello, sir. Please sit down." He pointed to the chair opposite him. Geralt raised his eyebrows and repeated, "Are you okay?" The young man seemed a little nonchalant at this time. Yes, sir, of course I'm fine. Please sit down." "Okay, I want to draw a picture for you." "My God, your movements just now are so charming. You are just like a work of art." Work of art. The Witcher laughed at himself in his heart. You can actually get such an honor. He looked back at the man groaning on the ground and raised his fist threateningly at him. This small action immediately made him run away. The Witcher wanted to leave, but the young man called Cronin saw him leaving and grabbed him in a hurry, using both soft and hard methods to press him on the chair. Geralt was very uncomfortable with this situation. He scratched his face in embarrassment and said, "Well, listen, if you really want to paint, why don't you go to a quieter place? I mean," he looked around. People came and went in the square, and many of them looked at him with strange eyes. To his surprise, Cronin's face became extremely serious at this time, and his voice became louder. "No, sir, you don't understand. This is the atmosphere I want. A hero who is misunderstood or even despised by the world will stand up to protect the weak. I finally found the subject I have always wanted to paint. "Sir, you are really my savior." Geralt fell into silence again. He found that he really couldn't deal with such a person, so he had to sit there like sitting on pins and needles, hoping that he would finish quickly. Who knew Cronin would paint longer and longer? He painted from morning to noon, and when the Witcher's stomach began to remind him, Cronin finally finished the painting. He excitedly showed Geralt the painting, and he turned the drawing board over. Geralt was shocked by the painting in front of him. The person in the painting was him, there was no doubt about it, but he didn't look like him. In the painting, he was covered with wounds and blood, holding a sharp sword in his hand, and the other sword fell to the ground. A huge dark shadow was approaching him from the jungle, but the Witcher had no intention of retreating. He still held the sword tightly and protected the innocent woman behind him. Regardless of whether Geralt would do such a thing, the amount of bleeding made the Witcher very sure that this young painter lacked common sense. If he really had so much blood, then the mutant he had in the green grass trial must be some kind of powerful vampire. "How is it, sir?" "You painted very well." "Good." "No, no, no, this is not good, sir. This is just a crude draft. I will take it back and repaint it with the best oil paint." "Believe me, sir, you will soon hear your name from those art buyers." "Oh, I haven't asked your name yet, sir. What is your name?" Geralt groaned in his heart. Even an art idiot like him could see that this young man had extraordinary painting skills. Then a painting about the Witcher would sooner or later be known to Vesemir and others, and then there would be no escape from laughter. However, after a period of silence, he still spoke. "Geralt of Rivia." Chapter 50. You draw very well. At 6 in the evening, Geralt hurried back to the house he and the black-robed wizard shared. It was very ordinary and cheap. Besides, it was enough for two bachelors to have their own space. After careful consideration and calculation, basically calculated by Shenyan, Geralt concluded that if he had to live in Novigrad for a few months until spring, it would be better to rent a house than to stay in a hotel. As we all know, the innkeepers are all profiteers who will try every means to cheat you out of your money. Although Geralt knew that Shenyan was probably very rich and didn't care about money, he still asked for a half rental. The black-robed wizard agreed with a smile. When they found this house, the landlord didn't want to rent the house to a mutant killer who kills water ghosts in the sewer all day long. You can make this sentence 10 times worse. Believe me, the old woman can be much more rude. But when the black-robed wizard appeared, she immediately changed her attitude, and the change was so great that Geralt secretly complained in his heart for a long time. Back to the point, Geralt pushed open the door, and he was not surprised to see Shenyan curled up on the comfortable green sofa again, reading a book. There were already several piles of books beside him. The Witcher's good eyesight allowed him to see the title of the book, The History of the Witchers. He said calmly, "What book are you reading?" "About your history." Shenyan partially revealed his face from the book, and his eyes were still fixed on the book instead of the Witcher. Geralt heard him say, "I don't think it's enough to know you from you. After all, you have been killing water ghosts for the whole winter. Do you know what the guard in the sewer said about you? Water ghost slayer. Haha, he really has a sense of humor." The Witcher put the sword on the table to the right of the door. He said unhappily, "Yeah, that idiot always shouts that damn title every time he sees me coming. I don't know how he came up with it. It's really a ghost, and you can't blame me for this. It's not my problem that Novigrad only has water ghosts to kill." "Yeah." Geralt walked straight to the kitchen and began to prepare something for himself. He hadn't eaten properly in the house for a long time. On ordinary days, in the wild, he basically ate some cold and hard-dried meat. If conditions were good, he would just throw it into the pot and cook it so that it would not be so hard to chew. Geralt suspected more than once that if he was not a witcher, the dried meat would probably break his teeth. While busy cutting vegetables, he raised his voice and said, whether intentionally or unintentionally, "Well, you know, when I passed by the Hierophant Square today, a young man drew a picture for me." "Yeah, he drew very well." "Yeah, and it's not finished yet. He said he wanted to draw it in the style of oil painting. He asked me to go to his house last week to see it." "Yeah." Geralt wanted to curse at this moment, but he held back. The black-robed wizard's voice with a smile came from the living room. "Don't hold it back, Geralt. I can still take a joke." "Yes, of course you can." Geralt remembered that he came back drunk a few days ago and accidentally vomited on some of the wizard's books. When he woke up the next morning, he found himself thrown naked on the balcony. The woman opposite stared at him intently. Later, when they met, she patted Geralt's butt. Thinking of this, he felt a chill in his heart. The Witcher decided to put the matter aside. One morning a week later, Geralt changed into a decent set of clothes. At least that's what the owner of the tailor shop said. Geralt didn't have any requirements for clothes, as long as they were not tights, but he looked really good in the blue and white robe in the mirror, so he bought it. He followed the address given by the young man and came to his house. It was in a remote villa in the upper city. It was a remote place, but the house was very grand. The beautiful wooden villa had 3 floors. Geralt looked for a long time before he confirmed that the windows of the house were all painted glass. There was even a small fountain in front of the door, with a statue of a man he didn't know. The Witcher guessed that he should be some kind of artistic celebrity. There was a garden behind the house, where he could see grapevines and many precious flowers. Geralt realized that even if the young man was a fool, he was a very rich fool. He walked to the door and knocked. The Witcher waited patiently for 5 minutes, but no one answered. He knocked again, this time with more force, and his fingers made a tapping sound on the heavy oak door. He was sure that the guy could hear it even if he was sleeping, but after 5 minutes, no one answered. The Witcher suddenly felt something was wrong. A familiar smell began to spread in his nose. Previously, due to the floral fragrance and overly complex smells here, he could not distinguish it, but now, he smelled it, clear and memorable, blood. The Witcher kicked the door open and saw the young man who was still alive and kicking a week ago lying on his back in his living room, with drawings scattered all over the floor. His entire chest and abdomen were cut open. His internal organs were taken out and placed aside. Blood kept spreading and flowing down until he stood by the door. Geralt felt as if something was stuck in his throat. His special eyes not only allowed him to see things in the dark, but also to see some traces that ordinary people could not see. Drag marks. He quickly got into the state. Cronin was not killed here. A long drag mark extended from a room inside to the living room. The Witcher slowly entered the villa. His footsteps were as soft as a cat, without making any sound on the solid wood floor. He picked up a vase as a weapon, stepped over Cronin and his internal organs and blood, and came to the room. It is difficult to describe the way Geralt stood in the room holding the vase. He lowered his head. The morning sun shone in from the open glass window, and the breeze blew his hair. In the center of the room, there was a finished oil painting. The demon hunter stood in the middle of the picture, his face expressionless, holding a sharp sword in his hand, with another sword stuck in the ground not far away. Behind him, a terrified woman leaned against him. The demon hunter protected her with one hand and pointed the sword at a huge dark figure with the other hand. "You draw very well, my friend." Geralt's voice sounded in the room. "I will post 3 chapters first, and the remaining 2 chapters are expected to be released in an hour." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.